Okay, welcome back. DevGod here. We're doing another YouTube video, but I feel like we say this all the time. Today we're doing something a little bit different because today is the first time I'm actually going to be doing an anime review, which I'm really excited about. So today we're going to do this review, or kind of like a tier list thing. Basically, we're ranking all the episodes of the anime today. And the anime that I chose to cover is an episode anime. I think some of you guys might know it. A legendary anime by the name of Chargeman Ken, the best, worst anime in existence. But then the fact that it's a worst anime in the most ridiculous ways makes this like a legendary meme status best anime. It's like so bad, it's such a bad anime that some people consider it the best anime, so as a whole. But this video, I'm going to focus more on like reviewing each episode individually and ranking each episode. And comment down below, see if you agree with me, see if you disagree. Feel free to spank my little L-Fast if I accidentally give your favorite episode of Chargeman Ken a D rank instead of the S rank it deserves. Okay, so feel free to slap that like button, subscribe, helps out the channel a lot. I hope you like this, because if you guys like this new kind of like anime review, I definitely am really excited to do some more anime reviews. Yep, and then comment down below if you agree, disagree, what your personal favorites are. And yeah, let's get back to the video. Let's get to the video episode ranking tier list thing. Okay, episode 1, Danger of the Children's Space Station. So in case you're wondering what happens in this episode, it's like Ceruleans attack an amusement park. Now, this is the first episode of the series, and usually you think like the first episode of a cartoon should get you interested in the show, but no, this is like one of the most average episodes of this series. Like, I guess it's kind of an okay introduction to the Ceruleans, kind of an okay introduction to the characters. Like, if you watch this episode, it's such a C rank episode that as soon as you watch this one, you basically know what all the other really average, boring episodes of this anime are like. I mean, some things to note though is that, Ken was never introduced to the aliens, so he shouldn't know what they're called, first of all. Second, they actually had some pretty good animation for this first episode, surprisingly. Like, don't get me wrong, it's like really bad, like by any other anime standards, but for this series standards, they've actually had a few scenes and the whole amusement park thing, and like with Ken running up to there, that actually looks somewhat decent. But besides a few pieces of good animation, it's just a really average cookie cutter episode that gets really boring. You watch this as a first episode, and then you exactly know how all the other average ones are like. So this episode gets a C rank. Okay, on to the second episode, Safe by a Hair. So in case you guys don't know, I'm decided to give this one a B rank. So slightly better than the average one, our first B rank of our tier list here. So in case you're wondering what happens in this episode, it's basically like Ken actually fights for one of the few times in the series, Ken actually fights against the leader of the Ceruleans on top of this like kind of a cool mountain, I guess. I'm not sure if it looks cool or not, but yeah. And then this episode, like, the thing that's most interesting is they actually, for like one time, and then they mention it a few more times without really bringing it up, and they only really bring it up when the plot demands it. But what's interesting is they actually explain, like, Ken somehow gets his powers from light, like he absorbs it. That's like what the charging is for. Now, like, how he got his superpowers, was he born with them? Did a scientist give him his charging abilities? Like, he charges light, but then he just like blasts things with a laser pointer or something. I don't really get it, but at least it makes somewhat of sense and gives him a weakness. The thing with matches was pretty cool, and yeah, like the smoke bombs kind of added a somewhat interesting setting. So yeah, it's more of an average episode, but definitely getting those like lure and having a somewhat really cool setting for this week's episode definitely gives it a B rank. Okay, on to episode 3, the Butterfly Swarm. Yeah, so this is a really interesting. It starts out and you think it's going to be another average one, but then they actually pull like this is like basically one of the first episodes that does this too, where you have an episode that looks like it's going to be an average one, right? And it looks like it's going to bore you, but then like the animation's bad, the sound design's bad, everything is bad. But then they surprise you, because then they throw an insane plot in your face. Yeah, so this week's plot is that they take all these butterflies or something that are extinct a couple years ago, and I don't know how they do it, but the Ceruleans somehow genetically modify them, so they're like zombie butterflies that eat human flesh, and then they go for the brains and stuff, and they have like these, they give the butterfly teeth, basically. Yeah, and it's interesting seeing, you know, this like butterfly, and just Ken wipes them out in 5 minutes. It's like, first minute you get introduced to these like mutant butterflies, and the next minute they're just all gone, and then the Ceruleans are like, oh, curse you, Ken, we'll like defeat you next episode. Yeah, so, you know, definitely an average episode, but the insane plot just immediately catches your attention, so that's enough to give this episode a B rank. Okay, next episode. Episode 4, The Mysteriously... Oh no, I think it's Mysterious. The Mysterious Handsome Boy. So this is another average episode, however they do something different. Every once in a while, it's more of an average plot, but they actually introduce a somewhat interesting character that kind of gets your attention. This is like one of the first episodes where a Cerulean actually like does a lizard person thing and transforms into a human being. Well, not a full human being, but like a human disguise. You know, like lizard people type shit. And then yeah, he enters Ken's school, and he's like the cool kid, and then, you know, Ken's jelly of him. And then somehow they go to this somewhat really cool construction site. It's like badly drawn, but for the series it looks pretty cool. And they just have this somewhat epic battle at the construction site where the Cerulean isn't just immediately, you know, laser beamed, one framed out of existence, but actually puts up somewhat of a good fight. I thought the motorcycle looked cool. And I also liked how, like, I don't know, the whole scene where, like, you think he's gonna do the transformation because, like, the Cerulean's disguised as a human, which makes no sense why he'd want him to, like, transform before he has the chance to defeat Ken, but, like, whatever. So the Cerulean's disguised as a human, they go to this construction site, he asks Ken to transform, and they do this whole scene where, like, Ken's, like, charging, go! But then, like, they don't even play the animation, and he's just, like, standing there awkwardly for 5 seconds. And then the Ceruleans, that's, like, still disguised as the human, is like, what, you think I'm a fool or something? So yeah, I thought there was a lot of funny moments. It was, like, a really interesting character of the week. Really close to being an S rank, but the ending was just terrible. I thought that Ken could have done a better job and not be an asshole at the end, especially when his, like, you know, sister is sad that, like, that the person was an alien. Or no, I don't even think Ken ever tells anyone that the kid he laser beamed was really an alien in disguise, so now it's just like one less kid at Ken's high school. Yeah, so really close to being an S rank, but, you know, just the ending could have been handled better, so that makes this one an A rank episode. Episode 5, our first D rank episode actually. So episode 5, The Terror of the Mummy That Comes by Carriage. Yeah, so I thought like the winter aesthetic was somewhat cool, like seeing the snowflakes, but it was just a really bad episode. I did not like this one. So basically, like, mummies are canon. Like, I can understand the whole aliens, because it's like a futuristic, like, Jetsons kind of thing they're going for. But, like, it isn't like Scooby-Doo, you know? It's like Jetsons. You can't just, like, have a mummy that's like a real mummy. And there's other episodes that I don't mind, because there's, like, zombies, and I think there's one that has, like, Dracula and, like, live wax people and stuff like that. And, you know, those are okay, because they immediately show, like, oh, okay, these are, like, monster characters, but they're really Ceruleans in disguise, because the Ceruleans can just do lizard people, like, transformations like that. So I don't mind those, but they never show that the mummy is a Cerulean in this episode. So, like, this episode, in this episode only, you're just supposed to expect and accept the fact that mummies are canon in this, like, futuristic utopia anime. And then plus, like, the story was just bad. So they spend, like, half of it on this, like, weird field trip with Ken's class, which goes nowhere. And then They show like policemen looking for the mummies, and that doesn't really go anywhere. The battle was kind of good, but I mean, it wasn't anything noticeable, and they literally like panned a shot where they just copy and pasted the mummy's animation cell for a good couple of seconds, which was just too much filler. Oh my god, this is so many problems with this episode. It was so boring. They expect you to accept that mummies are canon. I just do not like this episode, and that's why it gets a D rank. Okay, episode 6. Uncanny, the Space Botanical Guard, Biological something. I don't know. This episode deals with the space garden. You know, it starts off as a good episode, kind of, except not really, because they spend like way too much time with like describing Ken's school. They take up like half the episode. Also, we have a narrator explaining stuff. It only took like 6 episodes for a narrator to appear, so that's always cool. Yeah, so anyway, you know, Ken goes on a field trip, and then carnivorous alien plants attack him. But then the weird thing is, though, is I think, like, whoever was in charge of the animation this episode must have forgotten to animate the battle scene, because they're at this garden, and then he does, like, the transformation scene or whatever, you know, like that reused animation bit. But then they immediately cut to Ken, like, underwater, fighting Ceruleans, like, underneath the sea. And it makes no sense. It literally looks like they lost the footage to the battle, and they just said fuck it and put, like, I'm pretty sure it's water footage from a future episode in there. So that's kind of weird. I don't really understand. They didn't even transition it too, so that was just kind of like a weird animation thing. So yeah, I mean, the story didn't really make that much sense then, because they're saying there were space plants, but then they started saying that like there were Ceruleans disguised as plants, and then they're saying that Ceruleans are controlling the Earth plants, and then Baruchan is somehow at fault because he wanted to really see the plants for some reason, even though he's a robot. Doesn't really make that much sense. So yeah, I mean, it's like really bad story. None of it makes sense. There's a narrator, and he doesn't even explain it to make the episode make sense. They didn't even animate the battle right, because they just threw in an undersea battle in an episode that has nothing to do with like the ocean. So this episode gets a D rank. Oh my god, another D rank episode. Okay, here we go. So episode 7, Man of the West Ken. Because I don't even think they spelled that title right, but whatever. Yeah, so basically they just decide, fuck it, we're a futuristic anime, but we really wanted to be a Wild Western anime, so we're gonna go out, you know, we're gonna make Ken a cowboy, we're gonna make like Carol or Karen or whatever his sister's name is a cowgirl, and then they're gonna give like Baruchan a pistol or whatever, and it just makes no sense. So then they show like a really terrible animated battle, and I mean like really terrible by this like anime standards. Like literally most of it isn't even animation at this point. It's just like still frames, a lot of missing sound, and the characters are like even worse than they usually look. So my expectations were already pretty low from like the first 6 episodes, and then we get to this episode, and it's just the quality drop is insane. Like they must have really lost the budget for episode 7, I guess. And then yeah, it makes no sense. So then they spend way too long like fighting the Indians, and they spend way too long in this like bar scene that's really badly animated. Then we go outside, and it's like cowboys and the Indians are attacking Ken, and this goes on forever. And then eventually they just like out of nowhere they're like, oh, by the way, this isn't real. This is like a robot amusement park. We're all robots, and we just, even though there's like no other kids around, it doesn't make any sense. You don't see them pay for a ticket or anything. They're like, oh yeah, we're just like a robot operated Wild West themed amusement park. And then you think the episode ends, but then they realize, oh fuck, we had 4 minutes of really bad animation, and we need a 5-minute episode. So then they go from being like robots or something to being like Ceruleans. Now here's what doesn't make sense though. Here's the thing that really pisses me off. So the Ceruleans were pretending to be robots, I guess, and then those robots were pretending to be cowboys and Indians in this like weird ass amusement park that's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. It's never brought up again. And they fire fake guns at Ken. They make it clear, they're like, oh yeah, we had a gunfight with Ken, but we made sure to give him a BB gun, and we made sure that we had BB guns, And then now that Ken has, like, played BB gun, you know, Wild West time with us, he's gonna come back. And then tomorrow, we're gonna use real guns. Even though we could have used real guns right now. No, we're just gonna use the BB guns right now. And then we'll use the real guns when he comes back the next day. And then cut to, like, Ken really right behind him as they reveal the plan. Some really shitty animation, one-frame deaths, and then that's the end of the episode. They laugh, even though they almost died, and yeah, that's it. I mean, it's this really bad animation, really bad story, doesn't make any sense. It's just really weird, because like, this is like one of the closest so far that Ceruleans have come to defeating Ken. And then one of them is just like, hey, instead of using real guns, because Ken trusts us still, he still thinks we're robots or something, we're just going to use BB guns. And we'll just use the real guns next time. It's like, what? Yes, this doesn't make any sense. Definitely a D-rank episode, and I do not like it very much. Interesting, so we had 3 really bad episodes in a row, and my expectations were really low. Then this episode happens, and you know what, guys? I think we have our first S-rank episode of Chargeman Ken. Okay. So this one is episode 8, Cerulean X6. And it starts the whole trend of the Ceruleans just having really shitty naming conventions, I guess. So, you know, it's a pretty good episode, actually. Actually, a really good episode. Like, one of the best so far that the series has to offer, so... Instead of having an insane plot of the week, well, I guess they kind of start out with that, right? So they've tried the amusement parks, I guess. They've tried attacking with plants and butterflies, and nothing's really working. So today, I guess we just have a Cerulean who's like, you know what, fuck it. Ken is here, like, painting an outside picture for some reason. Why don't we just chop down a tree and just kill Ken via a tree falling on top of him? Why not? So I guess they send out this guy, or this girl, or I don't know, they're not really clear on the Cerulean genders, but they send out this Cerulean named X6, because they have a really shitty naming convention for the alien names. Yeah, and then at first he starts out, or she starts out, I guess it's a Cerulean disguised as a woman, I'm going to refer to her as she. Okay, so she starts out as an evil Cerulean, right, and she's just kind of traditional redemption arc, so, you know, she tries to kill Ken, but then she almost accidentally kills herself with the tree. But then Ken saves her, and then she has a change of heart. But then the Ceruleans don't like that, and they bust out the whips, and they start just, like, whipping her in public or something. It's really weird. And they're like, you go to the hospital, and you, like, put this knife up Ken's ass. So Cerulean X6 goes to the hospital, refuses to kill Ken. Then, of course, you know, the Cerulean X6 has that redemption arc where it's like, oh, why'd you save me, Ken? And then Ken's just like, it's common sense, it's what we do. You know, we humans actually have emotions and feelings, and we're not, like, psychopaths like you are. Even though, you know, Ken's kind of a psychopath, but that's basically what he says. And then X6 runs out, thinks about life, gets laser beamed, though, pretty quick by the other Ceruleans outside the hospital room. And then, of course, you know, Ken, oh my god, I can't talk. Ken gets out his laser pointer, he, you know, pew-pews them in the pee-pees, and then one-frame explosions. And then they actually have a really good ending where it's like, Ken makes a grave, and I'm gonna be honest, I cried a little bit. But then again, it was a 5-minute episode, though, so it wasn't like I could get too attached to this character. But you know what? They did a redemption arc story in 5 minutes. They did it pretty good. There's some weird animation things in this episode. Like, there's just one scene where the Cerulean has, like, the knife in the hospital room, and they didn't even color anything. They just colored the walls yellow and made everything else, like, this weird blue, purplish. Not sure if that was a weird style decision, or if that's just because they forgot to color things in and ran out of time, but yeah, it's like whatever you can get with this anime. Yeah, so really interesting redemption episode, really interesting redemption arc, really good, or not really good animation, but just like a really good story and an actual interesting character. And for once, Ken isn't like an asshole at the end. He actually, you know, reflects on his experience, and he's like, oh yeah, so, you know, I shouldn't really murder the entire Cerulean race, because there's probably some good guys on that side. And the whole fact that they're most of the time disguised as humans. But then next episode he immediately forgets X6. X6 is never brought up again, which is a shame, but I guess, like, This is one of those shows where continuity is just thrown out the window. But yeah, really good episode. S rank, well deserved. Okay, and then back to just the regular boring episodes. So we're back to another C rank episode. So this is episode 9. Enter the, I don't even know how you pronounce this, Jurulmamala. Basically, they build a Loch. The Jurulians are like, you know what? Let's just build a Loch Ness monster, I guess, and we can use that to attack the ships. And that's what they do. They basically make this robot thing. It's actually a lot more boring than it sounds. This is a really good episode. I don't even remember much from this one. They had like a Ken and Baruchan filler. It's pretty badly animated. And then, you know, there's like some strategy in the battle, because instead of like being able to just like, you know, pew the Jurulians, like Ken actually has like do some strategy in defeating this like robot Loch Ness monster thing. But other than that, you know, not much happens. And then of course this takes place during the night, and that brings up the whole plot hole of somehow Ken is able to do the charging thing without light. And don't worry, this happens multiple times throughout the series, so I'll like make sure to tell you whenever an episode breaks the lure that was established in episode 2. So yeah, Ken just gets his light powers out of nowhere, unless he gets them from the stars or something, or moonlight. But I'm not sure. They were pretty specific in episode 2 that unless there's light around for him to absorb, or like really bright light, that he can't. What's the word? He can't have his powers without the light. And then yet he just charges in the middle of the night, pitch black. And above the sea too, and I heard like the sea is supposed to be like pitch black at night, so this doesn't make any sense. Really boring episode. Not much happens, really forgettable. I mean, I didn't hate it, so it's not a D rank, but you know, it's definitely really boring, really average filler. Definitely deserves the C rank. Okay, so this is an interesting one. So episode 10, Baruchan runs amok. The first episode that actually focuses on one of the, well, besides like a interesting character of the week like X6, I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, this is like one of the first episodes that's focusing on Ken. It actually focuses on the robot Baruchan, which up until this point he's just basically been like the sidekick in the background. He kind of looks goofy, except it's really badly animated. It's supposed to be like a robot, but he has like a really weird design around him. He's like a ball, and he's like a turtle, but he's a robot, and he's beige, and he has like flowers on his head. I don't know, it must be some Japanese reference, but I just really do not get how they came up with his design. He's the weirdest robot I've ever seen. So yeah, they have a whole thing where like the whole family besides Baruchan for some reason is able to be taken by the Jurulians. You know, Ken's like in this ice cube thing. They throw his parents in prison on board the ship. They get Karen. And then you think, like, how are they going to end the Ken family? Are they going to, like, throw him in, like, a bucket of acid, or, like, you know, like, laser beam him like Ken has been laser beaming all the Jurulians and the butterflies and stuff? But no, you know what they do? They build a giant, fully functional guillotine in their spaceship just to cut their heads off. It's like, oh man, it's so weird. I don't know how they managed to build a guillotine, and their spaceships, those Jurulian spaceships, must be massive if they're able to build a guillotine to execute their enemies or their opponents from planets or something. So I don't even get how that works, but yeah, I mean, it's basically your average, like, sidekick becomes the hero of the day, but then wins in a goofy way. Now, it's really badly animated, so I'm not quite sure what happened. I think, like, Baruchan somehow turned on a light switch, and I'm serious, it's, like, so badly animated. It's almost funny, but it's so badly animated. I have no idea how Baruchan saved the day. It's, like, single frames and then explosions. So I think I think Baruchan somehow goes to, like, the control room and turns on a light switch, and then, you know, that one light bulb in the ceiling just so happens to be enough to give Ken enough energy to do his transformation thing. Yeah, so I mean, there was some high stakes. Baruchan was an interesting character, seeing him as like the main character, not like a sidekick, I guess, so that's always kind of cool. It's definitely really interesting seeing the Jerulians be an actual threat in this episode instead of just being like blown up immediately. Because they actually do somewhat succeed because they're able to like catch the family and like impersonate people and do like some 4D chess to get them aboard their ship. Now, why they couldn't really capture Baruch-Khan, I don't know, but yeah, it's better than a B. I'm gonna give this one an A rank. Okay, another somewhat really good episode. So we are on episode 11, Save the Earth. Or, well, I don't know, the subtitle said Save the Earth. The title on the archive that I got said Save the Planet. So, you know, I guess it's your guess, like, what is the real episode title, but I'm just gonna call it Save the Earth. Yeah, this is another B rank episode, slightly better than an average episode. So it's kind of like your generic, like, you know, Ken, there's like this asteroid coming to Earth. Everyone's doomed. You know, this isn't something that Ken can just blast away like he can the Jerulians, so, you know, there's some actual high stakes, and then they have like a whole room of scientists like monitoring this this asteroid, and surprisingly enough, this is where the father actually has one of his first like important roles, and then the father's like, no way, I'm not gonna let you save the planet, Ken, you're like 10. You might have superpowers, but this isn't happening. I'd rather die on this Earth than let you go out into space. And then he's like about to call the scientists and say he's gonna like refuse to let Ken do it. Yeah, so it's like really interesting that like out of everything that's happened so far, this is finally the time where Ken's father, although he changes his mind pretty quick, it's interesting seeing how this is like where the dad draws the line. It's like murdering butterflies, an entire species of butterflies, that's okay. Going outside when there's literally an entire race of aliens that are trying to murder you and our entire family on a weekly basis. I think each of these episodes happen like 1 week apart or something. I don't know. It's like weekly Monster of the Week episodes. So yeah, he draws the line, although he changes his mind pretty quick, lets Ken go into space, and then you know, it's just your average, like, you know, Ken the good guy has to team up with the aliens, the Jerulians, to save the Earth because both of them want Earth, so they do a truce to put both of their like machinery together, I guess, and they aren't able to like blow up the asteroid, which is surprising, but they somehow like use like magnet beams to like pull the asteroid away from Earth's gravitational pull or something, so it just like goes right past Earth but doesn't actually hit it. Now, you know, I'm not an I'm just an elf princess. I'm not an astronaut, so I would not know if asteroids are magnetic or if that would work in real life. But it worked in this episode. Pretty good stakes, you know. So I'm gonna give it a B rank. It is kind of an average plot though, like just teaming up with the bad guy for one episode and then immediately getting rid of the truce for the next one. But there were some good high stakes, interesting story, so I'm gonna give this one a B rank. Okay, so another like average one, kind of like C rank average, not bad, but just really average, really boring. So episode 12, We Cannot Eat the Vegetable Salad. So basically the Jerulians kind of have another insane plot. They're like, okay, these humans, they need their vegetables to live, so we're just going to, I don't even know how they do it. They like laser beam the vegetables, or they might have used a chemical. I don't really remember how they did it, but they somehow managed to destroy the entire supply of vegetables on planet Earth. And this isn't like the stored vegetables. I'm talking like, I think like plants in general, so there wasn't any food for the people, like vegetables or fruits, and then they couldn't give it to the animals, and it was going to be a whole food chain thing. Yeah. So then, at first it looks like Karen's going to be the main episode, because for some reason, you know, she's like a kid, but she really misses her vegetables. But then they're like, no, we're going to full 180 that, because she can't be a main character. We're gonna send Ken and his dad on that like spaceship that Ken drives around, Skyrock or whatever they call it in this anime, and they go investigate it, right? And then you think after like 12 episodes of the Jerulians doing these insane plots to take over Earth and like literally kill all Ken's family and all of humanity, that they would, you know, be a little bit wiser. You know, maybe the first or second time there's benefit of the doubt, but after like we're on episode 12 now, and the fact that they don't immediately suspect that the Jerulians are behind the entire disappearance of all vegetables on Earth just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, the battle was just really underwhelming. They blow up the ship in like 1 second, and then they fly back home. And then literally the next day, they're like, Oh, by the way, and they have like a news report thing on the episode, and it's just like, I can't even believe the ending, because it's like, they say like literally the exact next day on the news that, oh yeah, by the way, all the vegetables are back in the supermarket, we have vegetables to feed the animals again, thanks to Ken. Even though all the vegetables were destroyed, somehow blowing up one ship makes the vegetables magically reappear. Which, I mean, I guess, I understand that they, for some reason, decided to go with this, like, 5-minute episode format, so they have to, like, quickly wrap up the episode and make it seem somewhat good. But, like, no, I don't think vegetables, if all of the vegetables disappear on Earth, I don't think they reappear overnight if you blow up a spaceship. I'm sorry, but I do not see the logic behind that. So yeah, this is another really average episode, really boring. Nothing I hated about it, just the fact that it's, like, really cookie-cutter, really, like, average, like, you exactly know where everything's going, and it was just not a satisfying payoff at the end, so this is definitely a C-rank episode. Okay, so another somewhat interesting episode this week. So, episode 13, Showdown at the Undersea City. So this is really interesting, because you think, like, they'd start in the city or something, but no, they have, like, a really cool intro where they, like, have Ken's teacher or whatever. And then they have this whole cliffhanger thing, which I thought was really interesting for this episode. They don't really do again, which is a shame. Of, like, whether or not, like, Ken's teacher is a Jerulean, if she's, like, been transformed into a Jerulean, or if she's, like, a mind robot. So, I mean, that's kind of cool, like, not knowing exactly, like, who the real teacher is, although they don't really have the real teacher, or no, they just, like, brainwash her, so they don't get to do, like, any, like, cool things where there's, like, two teachers and Ken has to decide, like, which one is the real one. Which is, unfortunately, if they did that, that'd probably be an S rank, but I don't know, I just thought the whole, like, mind control thing was an interesting, like, little cliffhanger they created. It was also interesting seeing Ken, like, fight the robots underneath the city, so basically, you know, they brainwash Ken's teacher, and they're like, hey, we want you to drown Ken in your entire class. Do it for the Jeruleans. So then the next day, she's just able to say, screw it, and then break her lessons plans, go to the underwater city, and then, like, flirt with the, like, manager there or something, and then, like, convince the robots to, like, turn off the oxygen. So yeah, she almost kills her entire class, but then luckily Ken, you know, saves the day. Then he fights the robots, and he fights the teachers. And then, yeah, and then this is, like, one of the first episodes, but this becomes, like, a really common trope with the endings, is that literally everyone almost dies, and then, like, 10 seconds Ken defeats the aliens or whatever, everything's back to normal. And then despite, like, almost dying at the end of the episode, everyone is just laugh track, giggles, playtime, whatever. And then, yeah, and then it just rolls the happy credits, even though an entire class almost got suffocated right in the middle of the episode. Pretty close, too. If Ken wasn't there, they'd probably all be gone. So yeah, it was, like, an interesting setting. I guess they drew the underwater city pretty good. It's, like, kind of an interesting cliffhanger if it was, like, the real teacher, if she was a Jerulean, if she was brainwashed, and seeing how Ken would have to adapt to that, because I think he has, like, a thing for his teacher or something and doesn't really want to... Like, you can't just immediately shoot her right away because she hasn't revealed herself to be a Jerulean, so, you know, that's always a cool cliffhanger. But yeah, A-rank episode, pretty good, kept me on my seat. Although there were a few things it could have done to be an S rank, but it definitely deserves the A rank. Okay, another episode, another day, another episode. This one is called Episode 14, The Daibutsu That Vanished into the Night. Now, did I pronounce Daibutsu right? I'm not even sure. But here's a fun Japanese fact in case you're wondering what a Daibutsu is. Yeah, it's obviously a Japanese word. Apparently, Daibutsu translates to giant Buddha statue. Yeah, so basically what happens in this episode is the Jeruleans somehow take a giant statue of Buddha, turn him alive somehow, or control him with laser beams somehow. And then they just have this giant, like, stone Buddha destroying this Japanese city, and then Ken just kind of comes and saves the day. So, I mean, pretty average episode, but it was interesting seeing how Ken, like, handled the battling this giant, basically giant mecha almost, except it was like a giant Buddha instead. It was kind of interesting seeing that. They also do the whole mystery thing, but then they immediately reveal at the beginning that the Ceruleans are the ones controlling it, which of course you know. But like you already know that Ceruleans are controlling it. And then they immediately at the beginning show them in a control room controlling the Buddha. And then they try to do this like whole like 5-minute mystery thing, like quick mystery, where Ken's like, oh man, you know, aliens have tried to kill me and take over the planet on a daily basis for the past couple episodes. But I don't think it could be them. And then it turns out to be them, which doesn't make any sense. I guess Ken is just like a really bad detective. So yeah, Ken comes in there, he does this like charging thing, saves the day. And then yeah, that's the episode. Would be a C rank, but I thought the Daibutsu design was actually pretty cool. And it was pretty cool seeing a giant Buddha destroy a town. So that just immediately brought it up to the, barely brought it up to the B rank category. Not a C, a little bit better than the C, but definitely not an A. So we're going to give this one a solid B rank. Oh man, so here's another episode. Another like one where they try to do this whole mystery thing. Episode 15. I really put mystery in the title. It's like the art gallery mystery. So basically what happens in this episode is Ceruleans, the Ceruleans somehow, I guess they're like technologically advanced, so they can just like do stuff like this in this anime. Like I said, this anime makes no sense. They figure out how to do some kind of like Super Mario 64 like painting bullshit. So they make like these portals inside these paintings that go to an open field, and then they use that to like get the kids to jump into the paintings, and then they get on their spaceship. It's like a painting of a spaceship, but then the painting's actually a portal. Although for some reason Ken can't jump through the portal, but he can, you know, do the whole charging thing, get his spaceship to take him there. And then Ken just saves the day, so somehow he finds the field that was inside the painting. It isn't really a mystery though, because they never explain how that painting works beyond probably some kind of portal thing. And then Ken just like literally shoots the windows of the spaceship while there's kid hostages inside, so that's always fun. Yeah, and then he gets the children out somehow, blows up the ship. Everyone laughs even though they were almost all kidnapped by aliens just because they went to an art museum. Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense, but there's nothing to really hate about it. It's just another average episode, solid C rank. Man, the fans on my computer are so loud. Anyway, on to another good episode. Episode 16, Murder Record, Melody of Terror. And this is, I'm just going to be honest, this is a solid A rank episode. I actually really like this one. So basically, this is another insane plot of the week. So the Ceruleans are like, hey, what if we start this record shop? And then again, you know, just so remind you guys at home, this is an anime that takes place, I'm pretty sure, in like the year like 2200. So yeah, definitely a good couple hundreds of years into the future. And they thought we would still be using records as our main source of music. Yeah, so that's fun. They thought we'd have like flying cars and stuff in the year 2200, but they could not predict that we would get rid of the record players. But yeah, so in this futuristic anime, you know, record players are still used. These are special records that the Ceruleans are selling in their record shop because they have like this ultra high frequency or something. I don't know. I don't even think they explain it, but like they use. I'm just assuming they use like ultra high frequency binary beat type shit to like drive people insane. Now in the anime, it's like they turn old. So then you think it's like, oh, they turn the people old, but then no, they clarify, it just causes headaches and then it just makes them go insane and attack other people somehow. So yeah, and then Karen gets her hands on one because, you know, it's a fucking kid. And then she goes home, brings it to her family. She's excited, plays it on the record. And this is like actually really interesting because it affects the family, even Ken. And like they almost go insane. And they're like, oh my god, our ears are bleeding and there's like intense migraines and we feel like we're aging rapidly. And we're gonna die. This is how we're gonna die. And then Baruchan the robot is just sitting there and he's like, oh, what are you guys complaining about? This is actually a pretty good song. Because, you know, Baruchan's a robot, so I guess it just doesn't affect robots. And then it's just, I don't know, I like laughed way too hard at that, because literally the entire, and this is the only time where like, an asshole character like Barukan is actually, like, they do a joke with it in a way that's actually really funny, because, like, the whole family is just exaggerating. They're gonna die, they're on the floor. Like, they look like they're about to melt. And they're like, break the record, break the record. And then Barukan's like, man, that'd be a waste of $30 if I break this record. And it's like, oh, do it, we're gonna die. Yeah, so I don't know, I thought that was funny. Like a psychopath, but it's like a psychopath done right. So yeah, then they have like a crappy chase sequence. Ken defeats the aliens. You know, they almost go insane, but then they just do another laugh track at the end of the episode, cue the happy credits. So yeah, this was actually a better mystery-style episode, because they don't, well, they reveal it right away, but they don't treat it like a mystery. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's a good episode. Had a really funny joke with Barukan that actually made me, you know, do a good little chuckle. The animation was kind of okay, but kind of bad in other places. But yeah, just an average episode that is somewhat better just for the fact they had a funny joke. Solid A rank for that. Okay, so another boring episode. Oh my god. So, and already, you know, I think this is why some people, you know, theorize this anime was broadcast. Like, out of all the problems that this anime has, like sound design, animation design, 5-minute episodes, insane plots that are unexplained, out of all of it, there's another thing to it. So it's never been confirmed, but it's theorized that these episodes aren't even the correct order. It's like we don't even know if these are the right, like, production order that they're supposed to be viewed in. Like, even though continuity isn't really that much of a thing. But here's the thing. So episode 17, right? Find Ken's secret. Jerulians build, like, a mega robot, and it kidnaps and tortures Dr. Oh god, I'm gonna mispronounce his name. Yoshikaza. I hope I pronounced that right. Feel free to spank my little elf ass if I didn't, but anyway, so they torture him and everything, because I guess he's a doctor who knows Ken pretty good. And they're trying to find Ken's secret, right? Here's the problem with that. In episode 2, they already knew that his weakness was the darkness. And this is episode 17, and they don't know that. So, you know, for what very little continuity that they had in this show, they already ruined it. And we don't even know what the correct, like, order of the episodes are supposed to be. The archive in Wikipedia told me this is 17, and then the archive in Wikipedia also told me that the one where they did the smoke bombs, that's episode 2. So yeah, these are definitely probably out of order. But they're the order given to me. But that's besides the point. Let's see, some interesting notes from this episode. Yeah, it's just like a really average episode. They don't really do anything. They introduce us to Dr. Yoshikaza as out of nowhere. We're expected to know him. But then they never really explain who he is. He should be an interesting character of the week, but they just don't do anything with him. He's just a scientist, and that's it. So Ken just barges into their base, saves them, and then turns out there wasn't even any stakes at all because Yoshikaza didn't even know Ken's, like, weakness. And yeah, it was just like a really boring episode. They don't explain anything with the doctor. Like I said, it's such a shame too, because it could have been a really good episode, really, like, interesting character of the week. And they just do nothing with it. They just do another, like, character taken hostage story. I mean, at least this time it isn't like Karen being taken hostage, but this is your average, like, hostage of the week that isn't really interesting story. Definitely a solid C rank episode. I can't even really remember much about it. Okay, so here's another average episode that's actually, you know, saved by an interesting character of the week and an interesting setting of the week, but just isn't quite enough to put it to A or S tier, but definitely a solid B tier. So anyway, this is episode 18, The Great Escape from Prison. Yeah, so a Jerulian, you know, disguises himself as, like, this crime boss dude. I think he's like a Yakuza boss or something that gets sent to jail, you know, like murdered a couple people or whatever. So he goes into jail, and this is basically like a futuristic Alcatraz. Like, Alcatraz if it had laser beams, but on a solitary island in the middle of the ocean. And surprisingly, there's a narrator again. The narrator shows up and actually explains, like, so you understand things a little bit, and they do some really cool shots of the island. It's like, oh yeah, you know, if you really fuck up in life and you're a really dangerous human being, this is the place you go in the year 2000, whatever year this anime takes place in the future. But there's this problem. So this Cerulean breaks in. He disguises this like crime boss dude. And then he convinces the other prisoners. He's like, I have some bad news. They are planning, and he pulls out like a sheet of paper that somehow proves his story. It's like, they're planning to send us to this island. They're going to do like a prison colony thing like they did with Australia, but instead they're going to send us to like Mars or something. And we're going to be away from the rest of humanity, and they're basically just going to leave us there without spacesuits, and we're just going to all suffocate. I guess it's like a death penalty, but outer space edition to the extreme. Alright, so. And then, so they break out of the prison. Keep in mind, this is without sound excuse, so they're like busting down the walls, they're exploding shit, they're on these like really intense waves, and the animation looks somewhat good, but then it's ruined by the fact there's literally no sound effects, like everything's quiet. They don't even put music on this, I don't think. So it's really awkward. And then they get to the surface, or not the surface, but they get to land, like away from the prison island or whatever. They all escape. Somehow they all had boats or whatever. Then the Cerulean's like, hey, you know how like we just freed ourselves and we were able to escape the prison? Let's throw a riot, and then that way the police won't catch us. So yeah, I don't know, which makes sense because he's a Cerulean, because, you know, the crime boss is a Cerulean, and Ceruleans want all the humans dead by any means necessary, so I guess it makes sense to, like, stage a riot. And then, like, but then it doesn't make sense, because, like, why would the other prisoners go along with it if they want to keep, like, a low profile and, you know, not be sent to the planet to die? But then Ken comes along, he reveals he's a Cerulean, and he keeps the other prisoners safe, doesn't really mess with them, because I guess he has this weird thing where he doesn't actually shoot real humans, it's the Ceruleans, even though most of the time the Ceruleans are disguised as humans. So he kills the crime boss, I'm getting tired, crime boss Cerulean, quote, air quote, really air quotes, saves the day, but in reality, like, did he really save the day? Because they never show the other prisoners being recaptured and brought back to the prison. I guess it's like assumed, but they never show that in the ending. That like the Cerulean's dead, so that's good, I guess. But there's like almost 100 prisoners. They're just not on this island anymore. That just run away as soon as Ken defeats the alien. So it's like, is the day really saved if like 100 of like the most dangerous criminals in the future are just running around in the streets now and through a riot, you know? So yeah, I mean, really good episode. The ending's kind of unclear, but I guess that's what makes it funny. Really good setting. Man, it's just like the sound was a bad problem, and there was just some weird things that didn't make sense, like how the police not realize he's an alien, but, you know, it's definitely a solid B rank. I definitely had a lot of fun with this. This definitely deserves the B. Okay, we are almost 1/3 of the way done. Wow. I have wasted my life watching this. Anyway. Episode 19, Bank Gang. Karen in Danger. Yeah. So this is another kind of like interesting episode because it starts with this like bank robbery. And it's just like another insane plot. So, I mean, actually a pretty good plot twist because then you're sitting there, right? And that actually caught me off guard. I thought these bank robbers were going to be like the Cerulean lizard people or whatever. But no, they actually throw a plot twist. So it's like, before the episode starts, there's like these guys that look like they're part of the Yakuza who are really Ceruleans, and they're like, okay, we're gonna get his sister, which is Karen, and then we can draw like Ken out, battle him or whatever, because that always goes good for him. But before they have that chance to do that, Karen somehow accidentally, I don't even know how she does this because the animation's really bad, but she roller skates into a bank that just so happens to have a robbery going on. So she accidentally roller skates right into that bank, and then she's locked in with the robbers, and then the police surround the bank, and then the robbers are like, oh shit, we'll do like what these Ceruleans have been doing for a while, we'll take this girl hostage or whatever. So they take Karen hostage. Ken actually has a really interesting moment where like he refuses to use his powers, and then I think it's like one of the first times it mentions it, is like he has somewhat of a You know, people call him a psychopath, but he has like somewhat of a what's the word? I don't remember what the word is, like moral compass. Like he's okay with just shooting all the aliens he wants, but he doesn't shoot humans until there's somewhat reasonable doubt that they're aliens. But no, these are real humans. They're just bank robbers. So instead of being evil aliens, they're basically evil humans. They're like unrelated to the Jerulians. So they take Karen hostage, don't get the money, and then they're trying to like arrange it so like they'll release her if they can, you know, like run away from the scene of the crime and basically not go to jail. Then the Jerulians show up, and the Jerulians technically actually save the day, which is interesting. So they shoot up the bank robbers, and then the police go, and then somehow in the confusion of everything, the Jerulians are able to kidnap Karen. So Karen, this episode, instead of being, you know, taken hostage like once like she usually is, it's just such a overused plot that happens in this series. They take her hostage for a second time, this time with the Jerulians, then Ken finally transforms. Karen, you know, saves the day. Interesting, because I also, the first episode had a somewhat positive, but no music. I don't know what's up with that. Like, they actually have laser beam sound effects, and they actually have, like, gunshot sound effects, but then when it comes time to adding the background music, they have no music. And no foot sounds, too. They couldn't get, like, footstep sounds, so that was kind of a weird point in the episode. But yeah, Ken saves the day, and, you know, despite being taken hostage by bank robbers and immediately being taken hostage by, like, evil aliens, you know, Ken's sister doesn't really seem that traumatized at the end of the episode. Cue the laugh track, and then everything's done. Happy credits roll. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely kind of an average plot, but also really unique. They throw that, like, plot twist at you. And plus it's kind of cool seeing a bank, I guess, a future bank, even though it kind of looks like a regular bank. But I had a lot of fun with this episode. Unfortunately, it wasn't as interesting as an A or S tier episode would be, but this definitely deserves another solid B rank for this episode. Oh man, just as things were looking a little bit better, right? We had like 2 B rank episodes in a row or so. Let me check. Oh yeah, 2 B rank episodes in a row. Then we get to this episode, which quite possibly is like one of the ones I actually hate. Like the other D rank episodes, you know, they just have these stories that make no fucking sense. This one, I do not like at all. So this one is called Episode 20. Ken Gets a Girlfriend. So Jerulian basically poses as a girl, and then it's like a really crappy love story that doesn't really go anywhere. It's 5 minutes. But it's 5 minutes of Baruchan just acting like terrible. He acts like a little bitch, you know? Just ruins the entire episode. Because Ken's trying to like get this relationship, you know, and then Baruchan's like pouting in a corner for like 5 minutes straight, being like, "Oh man, Ken doesn't want to play with me," and then eventually he like gets a harmonica and he goes to the corner and he's like playing it really loud that even like it hurt my ears and it hurt the Jerulians, and it causes the Jerulian to like run away. Yeah, just like a complete really bad episode, and the Jerulian is running away too, saying like, you know, like sorry, and then Ken, you know, shoots him. Completely forgets about the X6, doesn't care it's a Jerulian fleeing from combat, just shoots him in the back anyway. And then Ken gets over the fact that that he almost fell in love with an alien and had to shoot the alien pretty quick. And yeah, it's just, I don't remember much from this episode. I just remember I did not like it at all. Baruchan ruined it. Baruchan was at his worst in this episode, and nothing else was in it to grab my interest besides this generic love story that you immediately know from the start, because they show it. You immediately know from the start this is not a real girl, this is not going to be a love interest, she's not going to show up in any other episodes. It's a Jerulian, and then the Jerulian's probably going to have a 1-frame explosion and die. Definitely a D rank episode, nothing redeeming at all. And definitely, like, so far the worst D rank episode of this series so far. Okay, another episode. Episode 21. This one's a little bit, definitely a lot better by comparison than the last episode. Episode 21, Karen's Present. So Karen gets this killer doll from Jerulians. Now how this happens. The family gets a mysterious package. It contains like this like creepy, you know, old vintage doll or whatever, then you immediately know that Ceruleans are gonna control it, and that's gonna be the plot of this episode. It's this like mysterious doll that's just so obvious. And then the dad's like, hey, you know, like, some stranger sent my child a doll, and there's no return address on this package, and aliens try to murder us on a daily basis. Should we be worried about this? And then the mom, and this just shows how insane the fucking parents are in this episode. The mom is like, oh, it's probably from one of Karen's fans. Which, you know, makes perfect sense, because, like, Ken is the kid who's, like, out, you know, like, laser beaming aliens in the ass and, like, doing one-frame explosion shit. But Karen doesn't do anything but get captured by aliens, so I don't know, like, what fans, like, she could have. I can even understand how Baruchan could have friends, because he's, like, the silly robot sidekick or whatever they're trying to do with Baruchan, but Karen, I just don't see it. And then the father is just like, oh, okay, if it's a fan, that's okay. We'll let her keep this creepy-ass doll. So yeah, then the doll starts, like, slowly hypnotizing her, but then, like, the doll's alive somehow. They don't really explain it. It doesn't really make any sense. But then, yeah, so instead of, you know, the doll just trying to murder the family in their sleep, what they do instead is the Ceruleans get they like do remote control the doll, right? The doll's basically a robot at this point. Use the doll to brainwash Karen, and then Karen is able to brainwash the mom. And then they take them as hostages, and they somehow, for some reason, go outdoors to, like, the middle of a cornfield or something. Like, wheat field, tall grass patch, or forest. I don't even remember where they went, but they went somewhere out in the middle of the night. They laid down, Ceruleans were, like, throwing firewood on them. And they're like, okay, here's our master plan. We invented this killer doll to brainwash them, lead them outside, lay them down. And now we're just gonna light them on fire. We do know where the house is. They could have lit the house on fire, but no, they had to do all these extra steps just to get the family outside, so they could try to, like, hypnotize them, put them to sleep, with this killer doll, and what's the word? Set them on fire. It makes no sense. So then, you know, Ken shows up, and then once again, you know, in the middle of the night, no lights around, he's just able to do his, like, charging thing. And get powered up, right? Power of Capri Suns or whatever, power of bullshit. Power of, like, the sun, except there's really no sun, gets in the middle of the night. Maybe moonlight, it was a full moon. But they never specifically say that he can get powers from the moonlight. Or maybe that's how he did get his powers, I'm not sure, they didn't explain it well. I thought he needed sunlight to get his powers. So, anyway, he saves the day. And then it's a somewhat wholesome ending where, like, you know, Ken kind of feels a little bit bad that, like, he had to, like, basically set Karen's new doll on fire, so he actually goes out, buys one. And he does, like, a really cool thing where he's like, oh, hi, Karen, I'm the mailman, and I have a present for you, which I thought was a pretty wholesome, ending. So, yeah, an average episode, but it did have a really wholesome ending and a somewhat interesting, like, haunted doll. So that definitely puts it into the B-rank category. And then also, the dad is apparently a doctor. They mention that, and then they never mention it again. And we have no idea what his parents do for a living after this point. So yeah, that was this episode. Okay, so here's just, like, another really average episode that I actually don't remember anything about because it was, like, so average. Even though it sounds like it should have an insane plot of the week, it just doesn't do anything to get your attention hooked onto this episode. So this one is episode 22, the Bomb Facts TV. And I guess the plot behind this episode is that Ceruleans are somehow able to, like, put portals inside of, like, CRT televisions, because again, this is, like, the year 2200 in this anime that this takes place, yet they're still using CRT televisions, so, you know, that makes sense. But anyway, the Ceruleans are somehow able to, like, create televisions that have, like, portals inside of them, and then they can send exploding robots through the TV portals, and then they just so happen to, like, sell these TVs to Japanese, like, trains and planes, and they basically put these TVs inside the, like, control centers, and then also, like, the transportation vehicles themselves, like planes and stuff, and they're able to send, like, robots through those TVs, and then the robots explode, and then they explode the planes. It doesn't make any sense at all and doesn't do anything to grab your attention. Really average episode, even though it sounds like it should be an insane, interesting plot of the week. It just isn't. Trust me, it's a lot more exciting than it sounds. One thing that is interesting, though, is that they foreshadowed the final episode, because, like, right at the end, I guess they needed to fill out, like, one more minute, so then he kills, like, the Ceruleans, does the one-frame explosions and everything, and then him and Baruchan, like, Ken and Baruchan are actually talking about, like, oh, are these Ceruleans ever going away? And then Ken's like, oh, no, we gotta find their main base, and then have an epic anime battle. I didn't say those exact words, but that's basically what he said. And yeah, that's basically all that happened. The foreshadowing was kind of interesting, but it was so obviously added to, like, fill in an extra minute because the episode was too short. And yeah, it just did not get my attention. Just really boring episode. Definitely deserves the C rank. Definitely a C tier episode. Okay, this was a very interesting, I don't know, in some ways this was kind of a meh episode, but in other ways this was a really good episode. It's like one of those really weird, like, I swear to God, this is in between a C rank and an S rank. This one was really hard to rank because some ways it was really good and in some ways it was just really bad. And it was just like a magical, this episode changed me, this really did. So I don't even know how to explain this. Ken fakes a mental illness to get into a mental hospital, right? And then once he's there, like, it's like revealed, like, you think he's actually gone crazy having to deal with these, like, Ceruleans. And then Baruchan is just doing a chase scene with, like, one of the doctors, which is really badly animated, yet it's so awkwardly animated that it's actually funny seeing it go on in the background. And it's actually interesting that the animation team was somewhat creative this episode, so you're having, like, this exposition scene where Ken and his father are talking about the situation. And then, I guess, like, Baruchan's in charge of distraction to make sure, like, no Ceruleans are overhearing, so Baruchan gets doctors, like, chase him around the waiting room or, like, the visitation, like, glass panel phone call area. So Ken gets his way into the hospital, and then he explains that, the government sent him to the mental hospital, so that way he could go into the basement and investigate, if missiles were being built there. So yeah, apparently this mental hospital, this random-ass mental hospital has, like, this underground basement area that just so happens to be big enough to store an entire nuke. Not sure why a mental hospital needs a basement that big, but this is just something that apparently this mental hospital has that, like, no one checks that basement even though it's that big, so there's just a nuclear missile there that can just sit there and no one knows exists besides the crazy scientist. Oh man. So then Ken, stops the crazy scientist, and then there's, like, a Cerulean who's, like, who looks like a crazy patient that's, like, dressed up as a Cerulean. So the Cerulean's disguised as a human, and then the human is disguised as a Cerulean, so it's really interesting character design this episode, I guess. And yeah, they basically have this nuclear missile pointed at Europe, ready to blow up the entire continent of Europe, because apparently, the Ceruleans don't have nuclear missiles themselves, apparently, but they can just get crazy scientists to just build one out of nowhere in the basement of a mental hospital. So Ken is somehow able to blow up the missile. I don't really remember how he's able to do that without murdering a bunch of people, but, somehow he prevents the missile from being launched. And then he goes to, then there's, like, this evil scientist, though, that isn't dressed up as a Cerulean. You think, it like, leads up, so you think he's a Cerulean. But this is, like, one of the most insane plot twists I've seen so far. So, this mad scientist isn't a Cerulean, he's an actual crazy guy, and he shoots himself in the head, and he's a real human. And Ken sees him, so then at the end of the episode, Ken literally thinks to himself, he's like, wow, I saw a man commit suicide, and Europe almost got blew up by a nuclear missile today. The world sure is a weird place. And then Dad's, like, driving him home, and then there's, like, this terrible joke they do. Laugh track plays, like, a really crappy joke is made, laugh track plays. Cue to happy credits. Yeah, so this is like one of the most insane episodes I ever had. Really interesting look into like how mental health was portrayed in the 70s, I guess, in Japan. Yeah, just really interesting. Like, the animation and the sound design, though, was, like, you know, again, really bad. Or, well, no, actually, the animation was good until, like, the last scene. Like, I think they could have better animated the whole, like, getting rid of the missile thing better. But, yeah, we had interesting characters. We had Ken in a mental hospital, which was insane setting to take place in. We had, like, really good animation at the beginning, but then, like, really bad animation during the battle, and, really bad sound design. So yeah, you know what? I think this is actually a A-rank episode. Really close to being an S if they would have focused more on, like, the mental health side of things. But definitely a really good episode, and I recommend you check it out. Okay, episode 24, An Invitation to Robot Club. Or The Robot Club, or whatever this is called. Yeah, it's a shame. The mental hospital one was a really good episode, and they followed up with this, which is another, like, really generic one. Not a bad one, though. Just, like, a really average, really boring one that just doesn't really get my attention, but doesn't make me actively hate it. So, I mean, it just exists, and I don't really remember what I watched, so... Let's see here. According to my notes, Baruchan gets invited to a robot club. Then it's an evil robot. Ceruleans are disguised as zombies. Now, I didn't like the mummy episode because they just expected you to accept the fact that mummies are considered canon in this anime. However, this one's okay because they have zombies, but then they immediately show that, like, the zombies are... Oh, what's the word? They're Ceruleans in disguise. They're Ceruleans disguised as zombies. They're not real zombies. So I can handle that. That they don't expect you to think that zombies are real and that zombies aren't canon. Mummy shouldn't be canon, but that makes this episode a little bit better than the Mummy episode. Okay, let's see what else. Somehow he does a transformation in a chokehold. I'm not really sure how Ken is able to pull that one off. And also, there's just so happens to be, like, one bulb. So basically, oh yeah, and I forgot to even mention the plot. So I guess the plot is, like, Baruchan gets invited to join, like, a robot club or something for robots. But then the person who invites him to the robot club immediately takes him to I don't know, what's the place? It's like the place that dead people go to, like, sleep with, like, the tombstones and stuff. I forget what it's called. But, oh, cemetery. Yeah, cemetery. They get, like, trapped in this, like, cave of the cemetery, and then they're attacked by zombies, but then, like, the zombies are just Ceruleans in disguise. Yeah, but then, for some reason in this, like, cave that they're trapped in, there just so happens to be one light bulb that is somehow lit up that Ken can charge with, like, absorb that light and charge. So his whole shtick, I guess, is absorbing light energy. Let's see here. Yeah, so this is, like, a really average episode. Doesn't really do anything to grab your attention. The zombies were cool, and I like that there were Ceruleans, but other than that, there's just nothing. Everything's just really slow paced, really bad pacing. No attention getters, no insane plot of the week. It's just stuck in a cave, basically, and invited to a club that doesn't really go anywhere. Yeah, so definitely a solid C-rank episode. Interesting, so we had, like, a really good episode, and then we had, like, a really kind of, like, average episode, and now we have, like, another episode that might just be, like, one of the best ones in the series. Okay, so this is episode 25, Save Young Yuichi, or Yuichi. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. No, please don't. Anyway, I'm gonna be honest, this is a rank S episode. I was really amazed with this one. The sound was good. They actually had, like, fire sound effects. They had laser beam sound effects, which is really interesting that some of these early episodes didn't even have sound effects, but then some of the later episodes actually had the budget for at least some kind of, like, they're shitty laser sound effects, and, like, they're not really good sound effects, but at least, you know, the episode isn't quiet, so I gotta give credit to that. They're actually able to have sound effects in this episode. Okay, so anyway, it stars this child named Yuichi, this, like, one-off character, you know, interesting character of the week. So his parents get into a fight, and apparently this is, like, a thing that happens all the time, and they have this, like, really cool scene where, like, he cries on a toy car and he runs out of the house because he doesn't want to hear his, like, family fighting, you know, it's like a failing marriage or some shit. But then he finds this pack of matches in like a garbage can or something. So he throws matches at these homes, throws matches at these houses, and he sets them on fire. And then like Yuichi, I guess he had like a change of heart, and he's like, oh my god, no, what have I done? I made these people sad because I was sad, you know, maybe... And then I guess this like doubles down as like a PSA of the week. You know, Yuichi is like, maybe I shouldn't set houses on fire if I'm sad. Maybe there's other ways I can deal with my emotions. Then two Ceruleans walk up, disguised in human form. They toss him a pack of matches. They give this kid more matches. And it's like, we're Ceruleans. And they tell the kid, it's like, we're Ceruleans, we want to see the world burn, we want this planet Earth, and we want humans gone. We want to control this place. We want, like, the resources or whatever, although they're really never clear on, like, the reason they want Earth exactly. They just want the humans gone and for them to control Earth. Okay, so, they give him these matches, and it's like, if you... He's like, little kid, like, we can set houses on fire, but we think it'd be funnier if we force you to set houses on fire. And it'll be like our nightly thing we can do. We can hang out, set houses on fire, and then we can just burn humanity together. So then, of course, Yuichi goes to Ken for help, and they actually have, like, Ken being a hero and, like, telling Yuichi, like, you know, maybe you shouldn't set things on fire, and that he would get rid of the Ceruleans for him. So then Ken just... you know, one-frame explosions the Ceruleans out of existence that tried to force young Yuichi to light houses on fire after they caught him lighting houses on fire the first time. And yeah, that's a pretty good episode. The ending was kind of rushed, because now, you know, Yuichi and his family just see Ken one-frame explode these Ceruleans, or these aliens or whatever, these lizard people. And then just immediately it's like, oh yeah, you know, this like failing marriage we had, you know, like all the arguments we have, yeah. Just by watching two aliens explode, all of that is fixed and we won't fight anymore and we're happy family now. No family therapy, no nothing. Just like flip of the switch and everything's solved. It's like, yeah, our son's an arsonist, but we watched some aliens explode, so now we're okay. So unfortunately the ending was rushed, but I mean like, the animation though, the animation in this episode is possibly some of the best the series has to offer. Not the best animation that anime as a whole has to offer, but definitely the best animation that this series as a whole offers. I really like the tear effects on the car. I thought that was like a really emotional, impactful scene they were able to pull off there with the tears. Like almost realistic tears. I also like the animation of the flames and the fire of the houses. I thought those were pretty cool. And yeah, there was just some really cool animation. Of course, they do like the one-frame deaths though with explosions, which is unfortunate. But I mean, other than that, it's pretty good animation, pretty good sound effects. Really interesting character of the week, really interesting family. Like a story that actually gets you invested emotionally and like gets you really interested about like why this Yuichi kid is setting fires and, you know, like what is motivating him, what his like home life is, you know. And it also just shows how psychotic the Ceruleans are, because like the Ceruleans, they can easily set houses on fire. But then they immediately go up to this random ass kid in the middle of the night. It's like, here's a box of matches. We think it'd be funnier if you do it. And if you don't, we'll just call the police on your little butt. So yeah, really good episode. This is like S tier, and I mean like S+ tier. This is so far, episode 25, this right here is the best episode of the series. And if you're to watch any episode of Chargeman Ken, I recommend you watch Save Young Yuichi. It's that good. Okay, another really good episode. Unfortunately not good enough for an A or an S rank, but still a pretty solid episode. So episode 26, The Girl Who Lost Her Memory. So basically there's a Cerulean that disguises himself as like a human child person thing. Yeah, I guess that's how you describe children. And then it's like he chases a ball in the middle of the street. He's isekai'd with Ken's dad's car. And then, you know, the dad is just, like, freaking out. He's like, well, we can't let the insurance hear about this. Let's just take her, you know, I'm a doctor, so I guess that comes back to play. So he takes the kid he hit with his car into the house, their house, and he's like, okay, so, you know, she has amnesia, doesn't remember the car hit her. I think we're gonna do good. Which is literally something he basically says. And then for like 3 or 2 minutes, it's basically just another member of the household, and then they go to the amusement park again from episode 1, which is interesting to see. Again, I think it's like one of the only other times they go to that amusement park that was in episode 1. And then, you know, it was so close to being a A-rank or an S-rank episode. Like, it looked like it was going to be another, like, interesting, you know, character of the week format. And then they immediately ruin it because then the girl doesn't have amnesia. It's not like a Jerulean with amnesia that's going to have another change of heart like the X6 did. No. It's just a random evil Jerulean that just tries to throw Ken off the Ferris wheel. And then Ken just immediately, in return, just one frame, explodes the Jerulean. And that's the end of the episode. Now, I would give it credit, though, because the episode was funny. Just because of how the dad was. It's like, at the end of the episode, the dad is literally like, oh, good thing that was that wasn't a human child. Good thing I hit an alien child with my car instead of a human child, or else we'd be in a lot of trouble right now. Yeah, the dad basically says that out loud. Cue family laughter. And then roll to credits. And now keep in mind too, like 90% of the episode, they thought they hit a real, like, human child with their car. They did not know it was a Jerulean, they did not know it was an alien until like the last, basically 30 seconds of the episode. It was a really rushed ending. So that whole time they didn't call well, I guess like the dad's technically a doctor, but they didn't call any other doctors. They didn't call like 911 or whatever they have in Japan, did not call the police, did not try to like find the kid's parents or whatever, did not call nobody. They just healed her back to health, and it's like, oh good, she has amnesia. Looks like we might just get out of this one. And then it turns out to be an alien, and they're like, oh okay, it wasn't even a real human we hit with our car, it was an alien, even better. Yeah, so just, you know, average episode, really close to being an S rank or an A rank episode, but they just do not do anything with this amnesia plot. This immediately goes down the drain, and this is a really, yeah, I mean, it's a funny ending, but it's like a really bad ending. Could have been a way more interesting character, so that's definitely what's keeping this at a lower rank. But just but then again, it's like asshole humor done right, and just like the family's reaction to this, or at least the parents' reaction to this in particular. The parents' reaction to this puts it to a B rank episode. Okay, another really interesting plot of the week. So this is episode 27, The Burning Poison Mushroom House. So I don't even know how to explain this one. This is probably one of the craziest plots to invade Earth that the Jeruleans have come up with up until this point. So basically the synopsis for this episode is that or I guess like the main plot, the main idea to invade Earth this week that the Jeruleans have is to hypnotize kids, get them on a bus, go take that bus, go to a forest, and then like lead the kids deep into the forest to find like these magic mushrooms, and there basically are magic mushrooms. And they get the kids to trip balls on these magic mushrooms. And the whole thought behind this is that they, you know, get the kids to go down to the forest and they feed them these, like, mushrooms. They'll, like, poison the kids, but then also, not even to poison them. It's like, these are literally magic shrooms to get these kids high. And the plot is that if the Jeruleans are able to get all the kids across planet Earth high, then they won't do their homework, and if the kids don't do their homework, they won't become intelligent. And if they do this for a couple of years straight, then eventually there will be no people left that are smart enough to counteract the Jerulean intelligence. Because like all the future generations will be stupid because their plan is they're going to take all the kids out to the forest, make them trip on mushrooms, and then they don't do their homework, they can't outthink the Jeruleans or something. So it's like a whole generation of stupid people, and I guess the thought behind that is that eventually, you know, Darwinism would kind of kick in after like years of just eating nothing but magic mushrooms and not doing homework. Yeah, I don't even know how to explain that any better. That's just an insane plot. Yeah, but it's actually a really fun episode. Like a really cool chase scene with the car and the bus and like Ken like, like peeking around the trees and stuff. That was kind of fun. It was like the weirdest PSA. It was like, what were Japanese children in the 70s doing to make it so there had to be an episode that was basically an like forest mushroom PSA, so that way kids wouldn't like trip balls on mushrooms. And not only that, but it's basically like stranger danger, don't do shrooms, and do your homework PSAs all in one. It's like a mega PSA episode, but it's just so insane. So yeah. Oh man, I wrote down here that they actually showed like the tripping like filters and stuff and like visuals that would have been an S rank. Unfortunately, they showed the kids tripping, but they didn't show they didn't have like filters on it, so it didn't look really cool like that. Yeah. Oh, and it also would have been like an S rank also if they revealed that the Jeruleans' whole purpose in invading Earth. I really hope this was canon. I have a personal fan theory that the Jeruleans' motives for trying to invade Earth is to get those magic mushrooms. If that was said in this episode, it would automatically be like beyond S tier. If this whole time the Jeruleans are trying to invade the Earth for magic mushrooms, but unfortunately they don't say that. But it's still a really fun episode, solid A rank. Highly recommend. Okay, on to another episode, another fun-filled episode of another fun-filled episode of Fun Times. Future Fun Times. Anyway, episode 28, Space Rocket Z9. Basically, the Jeruleans, there's like a really interesting character of the week. I don't even remember much that happened in this episode, but there's just like this rocket scientist who isn't really a bad guy. He isn't like the scientist that was like in the mental hospital a couple episodes back. Like, this is an actual like somewhat mentally competent rocket scientist. He's like working on these secret rocket plans so that way the humans can travel planets like faster and like be able to ship resources across the cosmos faster by having an improved rocket design that they've been working on. But the problem is the Jeruleans want that rocket plan or the blueprints to that rocket that's in development, so that way when the humans start using that rocket, they can easily blow up their material transports from other planets and stuff. So yeah, that's basically the thing. And this scientist is actually really interesting because it's like one of the few times they have a chaotically neutral, not a good guy but not a bad guy in an episode. He's like a really interesting character that I wish they really would have done more with. Especially since he's like the main character of this episode, because Ken doesn't actually show up until like the last minute to defeat the Jeruleans. So basically, like the rocket scientist is a human, so he isn't necessarily working with the Jeruleans, but he's willing to sell the rocket plans, but then at the last second he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And as soon as he gets so he basically gives the Jeruleans fake rocket plans, but he's not really supposed to interact with the Jeruleans, and he takes the money. But the Jeruleans stole that money from a bank, and the rocket scientist knew this. So basically, there's a lot of good things going on. Like, the rocket scientist is trying to, like, basically prevent the invasion from Earth, but then the rocket scientist is also greedy, and, he's totally up for scamming the Jeruleans and accepting, like, bank-robbed money. So, a really chaotically neutral rocket scientist that isn't really good or bad. He's just, like, right in the middle, so that's why I love chaotically neutral characters. They're really interesting. So yeah, and then it's like a really interesting seeing the robots fight the Jeruleans, because the Jeruleans pretty quickly realized that like the plans were faked and that the guy basically got, like, I think they said like $1 million that was stolen from a bank. So the Jeruleans are pissed that they paid $1 million for like fake rocket plans. So they hunt him down. They have like somewhat of a cool battle. It would have been cooler if it was like way better animated and like had actual like laser sound effects, but it was still pretty interesting seeing the robots fight the Jeruleans, and then Ken saves the day. But then it's interesting though, so Ken defeats the aliens, and then like the rocket scientist goes to jail because, he's a pretty shady guy, pretty chaotically neutral, but he did technically conspire with the Jeruleans to take bank money and almost
and was willing to give plans, but at the last minute drafted like fake plans to give the Drullians. So yeah, not a good guy. He has to go to prison, and he doesn't get to be credited with developing the rocket, but it's really interesting because they have like 1 minute left, so Ken and this rocket scientist actually have a pretty good like bro-to-bro talk at the end of the episode, and the scientist is like, you know what, I see now why like maybe taking $1 million from sketchy aliens that was robbed from a bank, I can kind of see how that's a bad idea, and how I almost helped aliens end humanity. And then he thanks Ken for the change of heart, and then Ken's like, oh, I'll visit you, and you know, your coworkers would like to visit you and like pay you a visit during lunch in your prison term or whatever, and we're out for you. But then of course, you know, continuity means nothing in this series, so then Ken never mentions this rocket scientist again. The rocket scientist never shows up again. The rocket scientist basically spends the rest of the series just stuck in jail. And that's how the episode ends, and then rocket scientist is hauled off. Yeah, so it's an average episode though, unfortunately, but it is driven to a B rank just for the fact that they had this really interesting scientist character. I wish they did more with them, and I also wish that there was a little bit better animation and like more sound effects, because it seems like another kind of one of those episodes where it was a little bit worse than usual. And then also Ken just showed up way too late to explain like why the scientist was a bad guy, so there's a lot of like, first half didn't really make any sense because like a new character that you weren't even given context to at all. And they didn't really explain that well, but then Ken kind of showed up and it's like, oh, you're gonna give rocket plans to Drullians, and you gave them fake money, or you gave them fake plans, and you accepted bank robbery, you're a shitty scientist. Or no, like, you might be a good scientist, but you're a shitty human being, or whatever. And then it's like, yeah. I don't know much else to say. It's like really interesting character of the week, but a really average plot that doesn't have the best pacing. So definitely worthy of a B rank, but it's pretty close to an A rank, but I think I am going to give this episode a B rank. Okay, another really boring episode. Episode 29, Rub Out the Fashion Model. And no, I didn't make that up. That's what the episode is called. Rub Out the Fashion Model. Okay, so basically this is your average, like, you know, someone like a human witnesses the aliens transforming before they're about to like rob a bank or something, or like blow some shit up. And then the aliens are so mad that this random fashion model saw them transform like days ago that they find out that she's modeling for this like swimsuit competition thing. I don't know, it's really weird. But anyway, you know, Ken's there with his parents or something, because parents really want to see swimwear for some reason. Doesn't really make that much sense. So anyway, the Drullians try to hunt her down. Ken saves the day. Not much really actually happens. Believe it or not, the phrase like rub out the fashion model, like the title itself is more entertaining than this episode is, but then once you get into the actual episode, it's just a really average plot, really boring, doesn't get you hooked or invested into the story at all. Which is a shame, because, you know, it starts out and you think like, okay, so maybe this fashion model is going to be like an interesting character of the week, but then that's like immediately like, oh no, she just saw Drullians transform and now she just runs away. And it's just, I don't know, they just do a really bad job of it. There's no real emotional connection to this fashion model, not an interesting character of the week. Definitely not a D rank, because there's nothing I can really say that I hate about this episode. It's just another really average, really meh, boring one. Definitely deserves a C rank, C tier episode. I burped. There you go. Elf burps. Okay, next episode. Okay, I'm back. So, episode 30, Save Karen from the Top of the Tower. Ah, man, this is a C rank episode, but it was so much potential was wasted on this one. It's actually really sad. So the basic story behind this is that, you know, there's these two Drullians that are like scouting out Earth, trying to think about how to, I guess they go to a construction site and they're thinking about how to like manipulate the construction site so that way it like falls apart while the people are working on it and they like follow their deaths or whatever. So yeah, you know, they're scouting and they're thinking about how are they going to make it look like an accident, and then karma bites them in the butt, because then this like steel beam just falls out of the sky, kills one of the Ceruleans on the spot, breaks like another one's leg and chest or whatever, but that one lives. Oh man, and then it makes you think it's going to be another interesting Cerulean of the Week episode. And, you know, he's like saying some really interesting stuff. He's like, I'd rather, so basically there's this injured Cerulean. He has to get back to main base so he can get healed. He's afraid the humans are going to find him out. And, like, if he gets found out by the humans and he dies without, like, fighting Ken or whatever, you know, it, like, looks like it's going to be an interesting character of the week, because then you're going to see like how the Ceruleans treat their sick and like what happens if the Cerulean gets injured. Here's the problem though. They start out really good setup. They have it set up so it'd be an interesting character of the week. They immediately ruin it though, because then this guy's like thinking about what he's going to do. And then like the other half of the episode happens and he just finds Karen walking to the amusement park, Ken's sister. And it immediately goes back to another Karen is another like hostage again storyline, which I swear to God they do so much. So it goes from an interesting character to just like, oh man, Karen's hostage and Ken has to defeat this alien with a one-frame explosion. Yeah, so there's like no emotional impact, or at least it starts out like interesting, but it immediately loses my interest. It's just a shame because they could have had an interesting character. They literally do nothing with this injured Cerulean. It becomes your average Karen is hostage this week. And yeah, just like really boring episode that had a lot of potential. And that definitely if they like try to rewrite it a bit, or at least the second half of it to really focus on this injured Cerulean, it would have been a lot interesting. But no, it's just a really boring episode. Definitely deserves C rank. Okay, episode 31, Crisis 1 Second to Blast. This is an episode that would be good, which sounds like it should be interesting. It's like another one just like last episode. Should be interesting, but they immediately don't do anything that they could do with it. So what do I mean by that? They have two things going on. They have an interesting character of the week set up that they do nothing with. And then they also have another storyline where it's like high tension, something like there's a bomb about to explode, which, you know, doesn't make that much sense. It's literally a couple episodes. We go from the Ceruleans literally being able to blow up the entire continent of Europe to just an auditorium, I guess, listening to an orchestra. Yeah, so anyway, so Ken and his family go to this auditorium for this like orchestra band that's like playing songs and music and stuff, or like a symphony or whatever musical terms you call it. I don't even know, I'm an elf princess. And then they find this girl and she's mute. And I think she's like an orphan or something. And like almost a slave, kinda? I don't know, they don't really explain her character that well. It was a risky decision to like make her a mute girl. Like, she literally does not have the ability to talk. I think she can, like, see and hear, so she's not, like, deaf, but it's like she's mute. There's, like, no vocal cords or something, so she can't communicate. Risky decision, so it makes this sort of story just does not really pop out that much. But then it doesn't even add conflict, because then Ken just pulls out a brand new telepathy power, and he's able to read her mind. So she's able to communicate to him that there's a bomb in the building. And then they find that bomb, detonate it, save the people, cue the laugh track. And yeah, it was like really bad animation, really drawn out. Like scenes of them just looking around the place for the bomb without anything happening. It's just like really bad pacing that doesn't go anywhere. Which is a shame. So like the interesting character of the week just doesn't go anywhere because they don't really do anything interesting with her besides making her mute, but then making her mute makes it so that they don't really communicate her story at all. And especially doesn't really communicate that story well in 5 minutes and doesn't really do that well. The bomb should be like a good source of tension, but they just don't do anything with it and the scenes are drung out way too much. So yeah, just a really boring episode. And I don't even know how they managed to do it, but they took pictures of a hand. So there's like a scene transition, right? But instead of adding a proper transition, or no, what I think they were trying to do is they were trying to like slide an animation cell to make it look like these two, bad guys were like, I don't even know, like sliding in the frame or something. But they couldn't even do that right because they took a picture of a hand and like a cue card that said like scene whatever, like one of those like action cards. And they just left it in the episode, which is so weird. I've never seen that happen anywhere, and I don't even think there's any other animes that have managed to do that, or at least none that have aired on television, which, by the way, yeah, this did air on Japanese television in the 70s, somehow. I'm not sure how, but they somehow managed to pull that one off. So yeah, really, really bad episode. They don't really do anything with it. The only interesting thing is actually just that animation error of like them photographing a hand, but other than that, there's just not much this episode has to offer. I would totally recommend you skip it. Definitely really boring C rank episode. Okay, episode 32, The Master Safecracker. So basically, Ceruleans find this like past convict dude that's like a felon bank robber, who like recently became a dad, right? And he almost has an interesting character development, but they just don't really do anything with him. They don't really explain his backstory that well. You really have to like, they like mention it for 1 second and then like the episode's basically done. Although I guess it is kind of interesting that I just wish they had more time dedicated to it. It was like really close to being an interesting character of the week. So they have this dad, and he used to be like basically a felon, but then he becomes a dad, but then he's like released from prison, and that's his goal in life, is to basically, you know, like better himself, like make his son proud that he's like a good guy and not a bad guy anymore. But the Ceruleans like you know, kidnap him, force him to break into a safe. Which, fun fact, I don't know if the subs were correct, but the subs in this episode said they broke into NASA. So I guess like NASA now's headquarters is located in Japan, which that's kind of weird, but yeah, so they're able to break into this like space building, this NASA building. They get him to crack the safe, and then the Ceruleans steal information on like a base in Venus. So yeah, so now they're not even planning to attack Earth anymore. They're planning on attacking like human bases on other planets, even though they want Earth. So, you know, again, Ceruleans just want the Earth for some reason. They never really get into that. They don't really explain the reason why. They just want humans dead and they claim the Earth for their own. Yeah, I mean, it's just really boring, takes way too long. They have like this kind of investigation thing where it's like Ken is trying to help the son find the dad, but it just goes on way too long. This is like really bad pacing, really boring, which is a shame because it's like a really interesting character, but the plot and the pacing just make it unbearably boring. So it's really close to being a B or A rank if the pacing was better and the animation and sound design was better. But this is just, I'm just gonna have to give this a C because this is like literally unwatchable because there's so many awkward pauses and just like drawn out scenes. This is a C rank episode. Although one of the better C ranks, but still a C rank. Okay, this is actually one of my more favorite... Oh man, my cat just walked into the room. This is like one of my more favorite episodes. Episode 33. My Dad is an Old-Fashioned. So this is definitely an A-rank episode. This has everything I like. So they start out with this like interesting character, this like son and his dad, but this is a different son and dad from the last episode, because this is an actual like relationship that the episode has enough time to explore and like really develop and get you interested in seeing how everything plays out. So basically there's this dad, and he's not like Amish. Well, maybe he's like the future equivalent of Amish. Like, he doesn't like how society has progressed. Like, he's like this old-fashioned dude who's like still living like it's like 1970, but it's like the year 2200 something. But he's like, you know, he's living in an actual like wooden house below the highway. He has like a yard still, like instead of an artificial yard, he has like a natural yard. He uses like regular tools. He dresses like he's from the 70s. He doesn't have like the futuristic lifestyle. He's basically just like an old-fashioned old-timer who doesn't really like the futuristic society, right? He's tired of all the Ceruleans. He's just tired of Earth in general. So already kind of an interesting character of the week. That and his son, because then his son kind of resents him at the beginning because, you know, he's teased because it's like, oh, your family's this like old-fashioned, and yeah, it really gets your attention. And then the dad, you just see the dad get pissed, and then eventually the dad's like, you know what, I've had it with this future society and these flying cars and these like Jetson sidewalks or whatever. Oh my god, my cat won't jump off my desk. So then Dad's like, I got an idea. I'm gonna kill myself. And then my kid, my kid can do whatever he wants in this world, this future society, but he's like, I'm done. And he ties this noose to a tree. And the thing breaks. And then the Ceruleans pop up out of nowhere. And now this is the episode synopsis. This is like insane. So the Ceruleans' plan this week is to help this old-fashioned dude commit suicide, because they think, like, if he commits suicide, then it's going to become a trend and everyone will commit suicide, because they'll see just how bad, that'll, change everyone's hearts and make them realize how bad the future society actually is. And then this makes the dad so pissed. So, literally 1 minute ago, he was, so pissed at future society. And then these Ceruleans are like, hey, we want to kill the humans, and you're a human, so why don't you just go on top of a building and do a backflip, or here, how about this? And they literally tied a rope to the tree, and it's like, here, we'll help you. Just step up here and we'll help you do this. One less human is one less problem for us Ceruleans. Yeah, so just really insane. And the dad gets so mad. He's like, no, I refuse to kill myself. I do not kill myself. You're Ceruleans, you're the real bad guys. I don't care if I'm old-fashioned, but you're not going to harm this society. Even if I don't like it, it's still human society, and you're not doing this. And then of course Ken shows up, one-frame explosions, saves the day. And then the father and the son actually have a really interesting, heart-to-heart, kind of bro talk, a couple episodes ago. Where the family problems, they aren't solved just by the fact that Ceruleans have been one-frame explosioned. They actually have a heart-to-heart, and it's Dad's like, hey, I'm still old-fashioned, but, this is your generation, this is your time. Son, I don't care. You can do what you want. You can do flying cars, fine. You can say that there's bases on the moon, because the dad still thinks there's, rabbits pounding rice cakes, which that was actually a really funny moment, Dad screaming earlier in the episode that, rabbits lived on the moon. And then the son is like, no, Dad, we learned in class that there's a Earth base up there with about 1,000 personnel. Yeah, so I thought that was a pretty fun episode. So yeah, the dad's like, I don't care what you do, you can fly in a car, or you can live the traditional lifestyle like I do, but this is your generation, this is your time, and that's your decision to make, son. And then the son actually has a really sweet moment where he's like, you know what, Dad, I don't care what the other kids say about you, I don't care if we're bullied or anything. I love you for just the way you are, Dad. I look up to you. You have a lot of good lessons to teach with your old-fashioned tradition. You might be old-fashioned, but I still love you as a dad. And they have a heart-to-heart. They hug it out. Their relationship is improved. And yeah, it's just a really good episode. Really good relationship. Really interesting plot that kind of gets your attention. The suicide stuff comes out of nowhere, but the fact that it comes out of nowhere is kind of funny. I know it shouldn't be funny, but I found it funny. Yeah, and then somewhat good animation, not the best animation, but not bad animation. And it looks like they actually had laser beams this episode. So overall, you know what? I think I'm going to give this an S rank. I was going to give this an A rank. No, this deserves an S rank. This was a really good episode. I had a lot of fun with this. It's definitely an S-rank episode. Really interesting characters, really interesting setting. Really good moral and really good, wholesome ending. This is just, a really perfect episode. Highly recommend it. Okay, episode 34. Skyrod burrow into the Earth's depths. Now, I'm not sure if this is the first episode that actually mentions it, but I think Skyrod is, his ship. So basically it's saying, Ken goes... how do I even explain this? So there's this factory that's in development, and then Ceruleans want to blow it up, and then Ken stops them. It's as boring as it sounds. They don't really do much with it. What's interesting is they said they're using atomic bombs or something to create heat, and that heat creates electricity, and that's what they use to power this factory that's going to be underground, this volcano factory thing. But they use atomic bombs. It doesn't even make sense for a future anime. Nothing about this episode makes sense. It's really boring. Nothing I can say I hate about it, just a really average episode that I don't really remember much about. I would definitely skip. Definitely a solid C tier. Okay, we've made it. The legendary episode that all people who have at least heard of this anime know about. This right here is a legendary episode. Probably one of the most well-known of this entire series, so we're just gonna get right into it here. And we're talking episode 35, Dynamite in da Brain. So, what's this episode about? It's about dynamite in a brain. Nah, that's just the title. So, Ceruleans kidnap this scientist, this like Dr. Volga dude, and they make him like a mind slave. And now, it's fun because they think that, you know, it's like a plot twist kind of thing. So, the real Dr. Volga's like wherever, like he can be like the scientist dude is. But then there's a Dr. Volga that is at this like country, basically like United Nations, who's like informing the other scientists of what to do in case like the Ceruleans attack their nations or whatever. And the Ceruleans aren't going to have any of this because they want they want all the smart people gone, so that way there's like no smart humans that can actively resist what their invasion of Earth. So they kidnap Dr. Volga. I guess they kill him or something, and then they make you think that he's a Cerulean that's disguised as Dr. Volga and that the real Dr. Volga is somewhere else, but no. It's like a mind slave Dr. Volga that they put dynamite in his brain somehow, but he still thinks he's alive. It's like a human robot dude. Because he reflects in a mirror. So apparently, you know, if you reflect in a mirror, you're human. If you can't reflect in a mirror, if you can't like appear in a camera, you're a Cerulean, because that's like this anime's logic, I guess, because nothing makes sense. So Ken puts Dr. Volga into the ship, and then he tosses him out the door, basically. Gives Dr. Volga, though, quite the existential crisis. It's like, oh, you're not even a real human anymore, and you're not a Cerulean, you're a human robot with dynamite in your brain. So then he falls out of the ship and he explodes the Cerulean ship that's following right behind him, so that way they don't blow up like basically the United Nations or United Nations for scientists or whatever. Oh man, my voice. I've been recording too many of these. So yeah, it's like, I mean, it's a really good episode. It's like a really legendary episode. Definitely a solid A rank. It's really close to being an S, but there are some like pacing problems. And also, it just doesn't, some parts don't make sense. Like, they think, like, they don't explain that Ceruleans can't reflect in a mirror. They never explain that. There's, like, weird lure implications that are in this. And then, plus, you know, they treated, like, another mystery episode, although the mystery is completely solved when you read the title, because you immediately know that Dr. Volga is the one who has dynamite in his brain. He's not the real Dr. Volga. It's pretty self-explanatory. They try to do a mystery, but then the title just ruins it. So yeah, really interesting character, really interesting way to die, being a human robot with dynamite in your brain. Really insane episode, really insane plot that actually gets you invested in wondering like what's going to happen next. Like, I'm going to be honest, I almost thought that I forgot the title, and I almost thought that Dr. Volga would be a Cerulean, but if it wasn't for the title, I would have thought that, you know, he's a Cerulean, but no, they throw that massive plot twist that he's a human robot with dynamite in his brain. Yeah, I just don't know what else to say. Really good episode, A-rank episode. Dynamite in the brain is legendary for a reason, because it's just so insane, yet it summarizes this series so perfectly. Okay, episode 36, another really insane one. So, I don't even know how to explain this plot. So, Ceruleans decide to break into hospitals. And then they have this operation. They actually name their operation this episode. They call it Mad Green. Their plan is they're going to go to all the hospitals, not only in Japan or whatever, but like throughout the world, throughout Earth. They're going to disguise themselves as like kitchen people, like the hospital chefs. And they're going to put poison in pregnant women's food to make them miscarry. And then the plot is that eventually, if they poison enough mothers, they make them miscarry a bunch of times, and they're able to do this for years, and eventually humanity will just die out because because there's no babies, because they got miscarried. See, it's like an insane plot, but it's like so fucking dark. Okay, that's a lot darker than it sounds, so... I like the dad's reaction at the beginning. It was like realistic for like a parent, but then it's kind of sad that the baby miscarried. But anyway, yeah, like there was good pacing of the battles. Although I don't know why they gave up when Ken charged 3 hospitals, because you'd think like they'd infiltrate like all the hospitals around the world, but no, Ken only has to defeat the entire kitchen staff in 3 hospitals before the Ceruleans decide to call it quits on that plan. Which doesn't really make sense, and then, oh man, then the ending is just something else. So it's like kind of a wholesome ending because they visit some random kid's room, and then the father says out loud, Ken's father's like, these women sure are happy that now that the aliens aren't making a miscarry anymore. And yeah, that's an actual quote from the anime, so that happened. Yeah, so I don't know what else to say. It's just like a really good episode, really good pacing, actual good animation for the episode, really good, actual good sound effects. There's like a really cool moment where like Ken fucking like does a grappling hook and is able to like swing through a window, like a hospital window, and break it, and it looks like epic. I don't know, the alien designs is like nurses looked pretty cool this episode. Oh my god, my cat will not stop jumping on everything. So yeah, really good episode, really good animation, S rank. I would highly recommend you give this episode a watch, because the plot is just high pace and insanity.
Okay, almost halfway there reviewing these. Episode 37, Beat the Hijack. So basically in this episode, how do I even describe this? So, human hijackers and Cerulean hijackers decide to hijack this plane. So, Ken, Karen, and his mom, so it's a good change of pace because they keep the dad and Baruchan out of the story. They're just like at the house, I guess. They don't even show up until like the very end, so it's really nice to see the family dynamic changed. Even if it doesn't really do much for the episode, it's kind of fun not seeing Ken's crazy ass dad and annoying Baruchan on the plane, so that's always a plus. So yeah, Ken and his family, except for the dad and Baruchan, are on this plane, and human terrorists decide to hijack the plane. They basically pull a 9/11 before 9/11 was cool in the 70s. Or then again, this is like the year 2200, so what do I know? Anyway, so they hijack the plane, they take hostages. Ken refuses to transform because he thinks they're humans. But this is the interesting part. So you think that the terrorists would be Ceruleans. No. They're actually real humans, which is a nice little plot twist they pulled there. And they didn't spoil it in the title, so I actually... I'll admit, they bamboozled me there. They definitely caught me off guard with that one, that little plot twist, so... the Ceruleans step up, because the Ceruleans just so happen, though, to be planning to hijack the plane the same exact day, and they are disguised as passengers. So the Ceruleans get up, the terrorist human hijackers are like, we're gonna take hostages, we're gonna shoot people in the head unless they, release our leaders from the prison on the island. And then the Ceruleans step up, and then they, laser beam the hijackers out of existence, and then the Ceruleans are like, no, we're actually the ones going to take over this plane, and either Ken dies or everybody on this plane dies. We're driving this bitch into the ocean, and yeah, so then the Ceruleans hijack the plane, but Ken pretty quickly, one-frame explosions, laser beams, charging, pew-pew, saves the day. And then the plane is just able to, after being hijacked twice, once by human hijackers and once by the Cerulean hijackers, is able to land, and Ken gets reunited with his family, and of course the same old thing, even though or at least half of the family almost dies, and the plane gets hijacked twice, once by humans and once by aliens from outer space, everyone is pretty happy for almost getting shot at and almost getting drowned in the middle of the ocean. Yeah, so another insane plot, but it keeps you on your toes. And the plot twist is actually a really good plot twist. They don't spoil it in the title. it's really caught me off guard, to be honest, even though it was basically just like padding for the episode, since half of it is filler with like the human hijackers, but I had a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of good tension, and yeah, and then another... It's interesting seeing Ken actually have morals, so instead of being able to just like pew everything, he does have to like wait a little bit and think the situation over, because there are like real humans on board, and the initial hijackers were human, so it's interesting seeing him have some morals. Yeah, so this is, I highly recommend it. This is definitely another A-rank episode. Okay, episode 38. Operation Cerulean Fake Friendship. So this is another kind of average episode that has a few sprinkles of things that are good with it, but it is kind of an average episode, but it's definitely more of a B rank instead of a C rank. There's some things I like about it, so... this is basically another, like, you know, Ceruleans decide to pull some, like, lizard people bullshit, but this time they're able to impersonate, like, a rich, kid and the servant, and they trick Ken to go inside their mansion, and I guess they do like a Home Alone thing where the mansion actually has like booby traps kind of hidden around it, except they, instead of using it against burglars, they use it against Ken to trap them or whatever. So I mean, it's definitely interesting seeing Ken in actual danger and not just being able to like one frame explosion everything like some of the other episodes are like. It's really fast paced and I love it. It's not really an insane plot, but it's definitely enough to get you on your seat. Let's see here, I'm just trying to remember everything that happened. And then there's a really clever part of this episode where he does like the whole like, he wakes up from the trap and he's able to do the whole like transformation thing, and he gets his spaceship actually to... And this is, I think, the episode where we learn that as soon as he does his transformation, that's how he gets his ship, because somehow the... they don't explain it that well, and I don't even think they explain it at all, but his ship is somehow like psychologically or telepathically like connected to his transformation powers, so anytime that Ken is able to absorb all the light and do his transformation, like he doesn't spawn a new ship every time. Like his ship actually is, it flies towards him and finds his location, and in this episode it actually crashes through a wall and kills a Cerulean, which I thought, that definitely caught me off guard, so that got my attention. So yeah, clever use of ship. And it's actually interesting, so he breaks a window, and that's how they're able to trick Ken into going into the mansion in the first place. And it's kind of interesting that right at the end of the episode, they redo it again. Ken breaks another window, and he isn't able to get out of that one because he breaks like a shop window or something. So it's actually nice seeing actual consequences for his actions for Ken for once at the end of an episode. So I thought the ending was pretty good. I thought the action and the events of the episode, the plot was pretty good. Actually, there was useful Baruchan for once, but then at the same time, you know, Karen was basically the hostage again and useless, but they were all hostages, so it seemed like a somewhat unique plot. And yeah, a lot of fun. And of course, I have to mention, it looks like this is the first episode that they were actually, or maybe there was one before, I don't know, but according to my notes, this is one of the first episodes that actually had laser beam sound effects to go along with the lasers. So, you know, most animes that would just be expected, but with this one, when they're actually able to have sound effects like laser beams, that automatically makes the episode 10 times better, just that they actually put sound effects in there, which shows how bad the series can really be sometimes. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun with this. It's still kind of an average episode, but it definitely has some fun moments, so I'm gonna go ahead and give episode 38 a solid B rank. One of the better B ranks, but still it's a solid B rank. What else do you want? Oh man, so this is another really average episode. I don't really hate, but it's just really average that bored me, and I don't remember much from this one at all. So, episode 39, the pretty robot is the heroizer. The pretty robot brings death. Oh, I'm not going to try to repronounce that. Anyway, so you know how like they have this whole trope of taking Karen, which is like Ken's little sister, hostage? And the writers are like, well, wait. What if we take the mom hostage along? Then is it going to be a unique plot? Kind of a unique plot, kind of a different setting, but it's just so average. It's basically the same shit we've been dealing with. So, you know, the Karen and the mom basically actually start out the episode. You think they're going to be the main characters and they're finally going to have a spotlight, but no, they go to this, like, this beauty salon and immediately get sleep gassed and taken hostage by the Jerulians. And you know, the Jerulians are basically going to do another like Dynamite in the brain situation, except they're actually going to do it with Ken's family to try to, you know, defeat Ken once and for all. So they're just going to mind slave Dynamite in the brain them, which actually works. And then they set the beauty salon on fire, but then Ken figures everything out pretty quickly and is able to save the day. Yeah, there's like really not much stuff to say, just that it's an average episode that doesn't really have anything interesting about it. It's basically Dynamite in the brain, but Ken is able to stop him before an interesting plot actually happens, mixed with another average, you know, oh man, this week Karen is taken hostage again storyline. Yeah. I think the only thing that's interesting, though, about this episode is that they actually confirm, although some episodes say something different, but this episode does actually confirm that, you know, like when the Jerulians transform, they can copy any human's facial features. Like, it's not like, you know, they have a dedicated human form and that's the only thing they're like genetically able to transform into. Like, they can transform into anyone they want. Now, they don't really use that often to be able to, like, transform into, like, a president or a lawyer or something, so it seems like it's a really cool, interesting piece of lore that they can transform into anyone they want, and it's not, like, genetic bound or anything, but the shame is, though, they establish this lore, and they don't really do anything with it. Like, they only use it this one time to mimic the appearance of the workers in the beauty salon, because they actually show they're, like, captured and like tied up in the basement or something before they set the thing on fire. Which, oh yeah, I forgot to even put that in the notes, but basically a whole bunch of people die in a beauty salon fire this episode, and it's immediately forgotten at the end, and then they just all do a laugh track again. So yeah, I don't really hate this episode, but just another really average episode. Has somewhat of an interesting lure that's never brought up again, and they only spend like 5 seconds on it. Cookie cutter episode, definitely would skip, solid C rank. Oh man, this isn't like the worst episode, but it's definitely a really bad episode, this one is, so. Okay, let's get into it. Episode 40, Race on the Murder Highway. Yeah, so Ken can drive a car in this episode, and it's basically a really bad episode, so you know, the animation is usually bad, but at least it's somewhat, like, you can tell what happens, and there's somewhat things that engage you, with, like, dialogue, or recycled shitty laser beams or something, but this one is just a whole other level of bad animation, so, and really bad plot, too, so basically, like, everything that's bad with this series summarized in one episode, and you get Race on the Murder Highway, episode 40. So what happens in this episode is the Jerulians, you know, they find Ken driving on this highway for some reason, and then the Jerulians, like, pose as this woman on, like, I think a motorcycle or, like, a fancy sports car, I don't even remember, but it's basically, like, they're trying to convince Ken to get in the race with them, so that way Ken either, like, loses control of his car and explodes, or I guess gets arrested for speeding or something. I don't know, they're not really clear their motives or their plan. They just want Ken to get in the race with them and speed, and then hopefully something bad happens to him. Yeah, and it's as boring as it sounds. It's not even an interesting race. The problem, though, is they have this, like, interesting highway, so you think it's going to be, like, a cool chase scene, but then you remember the animation for this anime is really terrible, really bad, and they're not able to really do anything with it. Like, most of this episode is just still frames of cars, and there's, like, a scrolling background that's really badly drawn, and really, they don't even loop it correctly, so they don't even do the looping backgrounds from Flintstones. They can't even get that done, so yeah. It's just a really boring plot. Apparently Ken can drive a car. The settings should be interesting, being like this, like alien race on a highway, but they just are not able to animate it at all, and it just fails to get my interest. So it's so wrong on multiple levels. It's definitely a solid D rank. it would be a C rank if it was better animated, so at least it had that going for it. But no, they had no idea how to do cars at all. There's nothing to engage you. It's just really terrible. Solid D rank. Oh man, and just as I thought Chargeman Ken couldn't get any worse, so episode 41, let's get into this. This is a really bad one. I do not like this one. Episode 41, Cinderella Girl. This is a solid D rank. They couldn't even make an... So it's already like, feels like a very average episode, right? And the animation sucks. The pacing is horrible and makes no sense. Just a lot of pauses, a lot of drawn out scenes. So it already has a lot of the problems of a usual episode. And then you add the fact that they're not even writing a unique plot. They literally, in the episode, state that they're just stealing the plot to Cinderella. In fact, they literally call it Cinderella Girl. They literally call her Cinderella. So Cinderella is canon. They take this interesting story of a Disney princess and just make it terrible. It's not engaging. It's basically the story of Cinderella, but terrible. They don't even like have Ken in this that much. Ken only shows up in like the last like they do this whole story about Cinderella. They plagiarize Cinderella with terrible animation, this terrible pacing. And in the last minute of the episode, they realize like, oh shit, we didn't have Ken in this episode. So then Ken arrives to the mansion to find like the Ceruleans trying to steal documents on a Mars base or something so they can blow it up. So basically they fit Ken and the Ceruleans in the last minute of the episode. And then the other 4 minutes of this episode is basically a really watered down, crappy version, plagiarized version of Cinderella. To be honest, I don't even know how they got away with this one. I thought Cinderella was copyrighted or something by Disney, or maybe it's public domain, I'm not sure, but yeah, just a plagiarized story, like an average plot that has a lot of problems with it, and on top of that, not even a unique story. They just plagiarized the story and made it 10 times worse. Definitely a solid D rank episode. Okay, so, you know, when they're not ripping off Disney princesses, I guess they just rip off their own episodes, I guess. But this one's slightly better, though, so it is slightly saved, because they decided to rip off one of their better episodes. So we have episode 42, the Air Force base is targeted. So yeah, as you can guess, the Ceruleans target an air base. But, you know, instead of going the traditional alien route and just using their spaceships, just like, you know, pew pew, laser beam, one frame explosion, everything on the airbase, they actually decided to have a kid do it. Now, it makes more sense than young Yuichi, because, you know, like with young Yuichi, the Ceruleans just make the kid burn houses down because they think it's funny. It doesn't really make that much sense, and the ending doesn't make much sense. But this one at least makes more sense, because their thought is, like, you know, they basically catch this, like, of any money, steal a toy, and then they're able to, like, blackmail the kid into trying to sneak into this airbase and steal, I guess it's, like, another episode where they're just trying to steal blueprints to the base before they actually, like, laser beam the base. I'm not sure why they just can't go ahead and laser beam it. They won't have the blueprints before they do it, so they have a good game plan. So, you know, that's something, I guess. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, anyway, so, and then I guess the thought is that, you know, like, the personnel or the soldiers that guard this airbase, this futuristic airbase, are going to be less willing to shoot a kid, and also the kid is going to be is smaller, so, you know, you can go through the vents or some stuff, you know, do some imposter type shit to get into this airbase and, like, travel through the vents and teleport into there. But then, of course, Ken saves the day. Ken tells the kid, you know, don't steal shit. You probably shouldn't steal toys, even if you don't have enough money to afford toys or enough money to eat. You shouldn't steal stuff. And the kid's like, yeah, okay, I learned my lesson, you know. I don't want the Ceruleans blackmailing me into forcing me to break into another airbase. So yeah, I won't steal anymore. So it becomes like a base, your what do you call it? Your generic don't steal shit public service announcement, and that's how the episode ends. I mean, so it is kind of interesting though. Oh man, I cannot talk today. I'm sorry about that. It's interesting because they actually like plan out how they're going to break into this airbase, and it is interesting seeing how they convince the kid to do it. The kid's backstory is kind of an interesting character. Not as interesting as Yuichi, but definitely an interesting character. Definitely interesting motivations. This is like one of the few episodes where you actually understand why the Ceruleans do something they do, because they explain that, you know, the kid is going to have a better time to get into the airbase than they are because of like all of the detections that are put in place by the airbase to make sure it's protected. Now, why a Cerulean can't just disguise themselves as a human child instead of having to like go to a toy store and wait for a child to steal a toy before they can blackmail that child, I don't really know why they don't just go ahead and transform themselves into children if that's their game plan to get into this airbase. But yeah, it's a fun episode, really close to being an A or an S, but you know, it's just, I don't know, the character just isn't as interesting and developed as Yuichi is, and it is definitely, it's noticeable that it's just kind of like a rewrite of that episode. Not like a full-on rip-off, but definitely a rewrite. And there are a little bit too much filler, a little bit problems with the pacing, but other than that, it is a pretty fun episode, a pretty good episode. Doesn't really keep you on the edge of your seat, but still kind of piques your interest. It's definitely a solid B-rank episode. Okay, another S-rank episode. This is a really good one. Okay, I like this. This is a really good one. Episode 43, Peer Through the Camera. So this is basically like another situation like they had a lot of episodes ago with like Cerulean X6 or X8. I already forgot his name or her name, but basically this episode deals with another Cerulean that becomes disillusioned with the other Ceruleans and actually has a really interesting perspective as a character. So he is different. Okay, looks like this guy's name is J7 and he is different from X6, so if you remember a few episodes ago, there was a Cerulean called X6, and then the whole thing with her was that, you know, Ken saved her life, and then she had to change of heart. But this episode's interesting as, like, they show this character who, just by interacting with the humans and studying them, had a change of heart, and even tried to convince the other Ceruleans to change their heart. And it was definitely a really interesting perspective. So basically, we start out in this, like, Kendo dojo, which I actually looked it up, so here's your fun Japanese fact. Kendo is like this form of Japanese karate, but it focuses on like bamboo swords and wearing this protective like equipment so you don't get hurt. So it's basically karate, but with bamboo / wooden swords, and it's called Way of the Sword. It seems pretty cool. I looked it up on Wikipedia. Definitely recommend you read about Kendo, but yeah, anyway, back to the plot. So, you know, the Cerulean became this, like, this master at Kendo, and he's helping coach the children, but Ken's, you know, suspicious of him because the government said that this is, like, a person of interest. So then it cuts to after class, Ken and Baruchan's following him, and then Ken pulls out a picture, because the weird lure behind these Ceruleans is that they can't appear in mirrors, and they can't appear, like, on a photograph or on a video if they're transformed in their human forms, which I guess is just some weird side effect of their transformation. They don't really explain how that works. So they follow him, and then this Cerulean, J7, this Kendo teacher, comes across these other Ceruleans in a back alley, right? I mean, these are actual evil Ceruleans. So they're talking, he's like, you know, the Demon King ordered you to infiltrate this karate class so you could kill Ken, right? Gain his trust and kill Ken. Like, you've obviously gained his trust. Why haven't you killed Ken? And J7 just gives this, like, really interesting speech, and they have, like, a whole, like, an actual, like, 5-minute, like, philosophical debate that's, like, really interesting in the middle of this, like, back alley. So, you know, J7's like, you know, we may be way more advanced than the Cerulean, or not, no, like, we Ceruleans are more advanced than these humans by, like, many years, while at the same time these humans have many things and many traditions that we have lost during our conquest of space or whatever, or our search for a new planet that we need to readopt. And then he's, like, saying, like, you know, like, we can still invade Earth, but we should, like, work alongside the humans and combine both of our skills so we can have, like, the emotions not actually be, you know, murdering psychopathic aliens, but we can team up with the aliens, you know, control this Earth together. and then we can like team up and really make space a better place and have enough like food and water for everyone basically. And then the other Ceruleans, they just think he's nuts, and they're kind of in the military mode where they're like, you know, the king gave you an order and you're disobeying the king. And then J7 says something really interesting. J7's like, why do we listen to the king? Why don't we become the king of the Ceruleans? Or like, why don't I become the king of the Ceruleans and, you know, team up with the humans and really live for peace and prosperity? And then he also kind of mentions like, can they even call it peace if they murder the humans? So he says a lot of interesting stuff. A lot of lore is established. And I don't know, this like philosophical debate is done really good. Well, as good as this anime could do. It really caught my interest. And actually made me think about life a little bit. Yeah, so then eventually the other Ceruleans are like, no, you've gone crazy. You've disrespected the Cerulean Empire. You're disobeying the king's orders, and you're actively thinking about, you know, basically assassinating the king and, like, proclaiming himself as king. So they quickly they all of them laser beam his ass, you know, one frame explosion. J7 is dead. So then, of course, Ken is, like, behind a trash can overhearing all of this, so Ken steps up and, avenges J7's death, kills the other Ceruleans, and then he has, like, another similar moment where he's like, oh, you know, J7, you're a really good guy, and they actually have, like, a really sad funeral for him at the end, and, you know, Ken reflects that, like, you know, not all Ceruleans are bad, but it's just because of their government, it's their style. Like, at heart, they're good people, but it's because they're in this society that's, like, wants to conquer space and find a new home that's driving them to evil. But he understands that there's good Ceruleans. Now, of course, next episode, he immediately goes back to just shooting the Ceruleans first without asking any questions. And, yeah, so this is back to the status quo, but yeah. I had a lot of fun with this episode. I thought it was an interesting episode. It was basically like another like really, really, really interesting Cerulean of the Week episode, redemption arc kind of thing. A really good philosophy was discussed in this episode. So yeah, I definitely really highly recommend it. Of course, like the camera thing doesn't really make sense, but you know, this is the logic of this anime. But yeah, solid S rank episode, best episode of the series. I highly recommend you watch this episode 43. It's a really good episode, solid S rank. Okay, episode 44, Beat the Fake Ken. This is another pretty good episode, not really S rank, but definitely a solid A rank episode, so I was surprised it took, you have these like lizard people, like Cerulean alien species that's able to like transform into any humans they want. So it's really interesting seeing that they haven't done this kind of episode yet, especially since like the whole like evil twin doppelganger thing seems like an interesting, like a common sci-fi trope, but this is the 70s before a lot of the anime/sci-fi tropes are established, so yeah, but they finally got around to it. They have a Cerulean pose as a imposter Ken. So I guess like the story behind this, the story is kind of, you know, it's really close to being an S rank, but the story doesn't make that much sense, so they're able to capture Ken, but instead of immediately killing him, they just lock him up in this dungeon, right? I guess they've tried a lot of shit at this point. It's been 40 episodes of insane plots. Either kill Ken or invade the whole entire world or cause the collapse of human civilization. So they get Ken, they get his teacher, lock him up in the underground abandoned dungeon that's just sitting there for no reason, I guess. But then I guess they want to like discredit Ken, or maybe use Ken to like kidnap other humans. I'm not sure. They're not really clear on their purpose for using a fake Ken, but yeah, so basically the real Ken is locked up in jail, and the fake Ken is just running around doing stuff that the real Ken wouldn't do, like skipping class. I think he like refused to like help old people cross the road or something. So yeah, they have the real Ken, they're like using this fake Ken that's actually a Cerulean to make Ken look like a bigger asshole than he already is. Alright, so they're able to do that, but then his family catches him, and possibly one of the most funniest scenes happens in this entire anime, because like nothing makes sense and they barely explain anything. So the fake Ken is at home with the family at dinner, I guess like the Cerulean is like, hey, if I'm gonna ruin this kid's reputation, I'm already disguised as him, so I might as well infiltrate his family so I can have a couple free dinners with the family, right? Since I'm a kid, they gotta feed me. So he takes a sip of this tomato juice, and then Baruchan, Karen, the mom, everyone grabs a bat, and they immediately begin to beat the shit out of this fake Ken without asking any questions as soon as they see him eat this tomato juice, and it just comes out of nowhere. Like, I'm gonna be honest, that put me on the floor laughing. I was so bored up until this point. Yeah, so that definitely got a good couple of chuckles out of me. Yeah, so they beat the fake Ken. The dad goes and gets like this cancer gun or something that can melt all living life forms if it's directed at them. So some kind of like radiation, really powerful radiation gun that he's just like holding there, and he puts it to the fake Ken's head. The fake alien's like, oh, why would you pull a gun on your son and hit me with bats and bonk me? And then they're like, oh, Ken hates tomato juice, and you love tomato juice a little too much, so we think you're an alien. And the dad, of course, points the cancer gun at the alien, threatens to shoot unless he tells them where their real son is at. The fake Ken discloses the location of the real Ken. Then the dad, dad's kind of a psychopath. I think that's where Ken gets his psychopathic tendencies, is from the dad, because then the dad immediately, pew-pews the fake Ken Cerulean disguised person at one frame explosion, boom, out of existence, and they melt. Then they have like a really fun scene where the Ceruleans that are holding Ken's hostage, they're like, oh shit, the police are coming, flood the dungeon. So it's like, yeah, so they had Ken in this dungeon for like a week, had this fake Ken in his place, this Cerulean, and instead of killing Ken immediately, they just wait a week, and then they're like, oh, now that the police are coming, we should try to drown him. Yeah, and then even though he's in this dark-ass dungeon, he's able to somehow absorb light through the window and defeat the Ceruleans, break out of prison with his teacher. And that's about it. Yeah, so it's your average like doppelganger story. It's interesting because you don't really know where it's going to go. It's really close to being an S rank, but unfortunately there's just motivations that aren't well explained. And also, Ken never fights the fake Cerulean because his family basically kills off the fake Ken. So it would have been really interesting to see like a Ken versus Ken battle, or have a situation, where the family has to actually decide like which Ken is the real Ken and have both of them in the same spot. Which is really weird. You think that'd be like a really easy thing, like copy and paste the animation cells for Ken and the fake Ken and have like a really cool thing there, but no, they never do that, which is surprising, I guess. They don't do that trope. But yeah, other than some minor plot holes and some weird pacing issues, it's a pretty good episode. I'd recommend you watch it. Definitely a solid A-rank episode. Really good. Okay, I had a couple of interesting episodes in a row. We're back to the usual average, meh, boring episodes. Yeah, but this is one of the more legendary episodes, but I don't really see why it's that legendary, but I mean, it does have one kind of good moment. So we're talking about episode 45, When the Cuckoo Clock Strikes 3. So basically, a Cerulean is able to become Karen's music piano teacher somehow. And then it's kind of interesting because you think that it's going to become like the average, Karen is hostage and Ken has to go save her storyline. But no, they brainwash Karen. And they're like, kill your fucking brother. He has killed many of our Cerulean comrades. We need you to take him out for us. When it's like 3 o'clock in the middle of the morning. So they hypnotize Karen. Karen goes home. She doesn't know what's up. 3 o'clock in the morning happens. And so Karen grabs a knife from the kitchen. Baruchan's sitting there eating ice cream because, it makes sense why a robot would need to eat food. So, Karen tries to kill Ken. I'm going to be honest. Of course, Karen is like Ken's little sister, and Ken was asleep, so it's not like, he really put up much of a fight. But this whole time, I've been thinking like Karen is just this, not as bad as like Sakura from Naruto, but just another like really useless anime character who all they do is get captured, basically like a Princess Peach, right? But no, she actually has some pretty good knife skills. Now, if that's because the Ceruleans had her hypnotized, or if Ken was asleep so he wasn't doing a full-on struggle, plus it is his little sister, so, you know, it's not like he's gonna, like, try to kill her for trying to kill him. But yeah, she almost killed Ken. She was pretty close, but then the parents come in. The parents basically, like, spank her little ass, you know, slap her around a little bit. So yeah, so if your children are hypnotized, apparently corporal punishment is what can snap them out of hypnotism pretty good. So Karen was almost able to kill Ken. She's pretty overpowered when she's hypnotized, so that was kind of interesting, seeing the power dynamic there. Yeah, what else? Yeah, so everything was just really fast for the 5-minute format. You know, Karen and Ken then immediately go to the music room in the middle of the night, I guess, but he's able to transform, he like to absorb no sunlight. Yeah, he just like one-frame explosions the Ceruleans and he saves the day. So it's actually a pretty good episode. Kind of interesting seeing Karen's like true powers, because you know this is like one of the first and only time that Karen is actually somewhat useful, even if she almost kills Ken, I guess. So really interesting seeing that. You know what? I was gonna give this a C rank, but just because they're actually interesting in showing her being overpowered for once, and yeah, like it's interesting. It could have been a hostage of the week. Now that I see that, it could have been hostage of the week, and if they went for a hostage of the week with Karen as hostage, it'd definitely be another C rank episode. But since they actually do something interesting with the whole like brainwashing thing in the knife fight between Ken and Karen, that was really interesting. That definitely got my attention. You know what? I think this is actually a solid B rank episode. Okay, this is another really boring episode I don't remember much about. Episode 46, Terror, the House of the White-Haired Crone, or Crane, or Crone? I don't even know if that's a real word, but anyway, yeah, C-rank episode. So Ken and his friends are out in the rain doing bicycle shit. They come across this, like, abandoned house, but there just so happens to be a person who lives there. But then they gas chamber them somehow, kind of put them to sleep. And then the Ceruleans start to get ready to, like, build a fire, because they're like, this is done with these children ruining these plans. They're really done with Ken, but since they catch his friends, they're like, yeah, fuck it, we'll just burn all the children. And then Ken wakes up pretty quick, even though he's gassed, and he's able to save the day. Yeah, it's as boring as it sounds. It's a really average episode. You immediately know that, like, Ceruleans are living in this house, even though they are disguised as old people. Not really anything is interesting. It happens, and then you're done. You barely remember it's even an episode of Chargeman Ken. That's how boring and uneventful it is. So yeah, it's just solid C rank. Just really average episode. Really average episode. Okay, episode 47, The Great Ceruleans Counterattack. So I don't know how to feel about this episode, so, you know, they finally decide, like, you know, screw it. We're gonna send our entire Space Force and try to defeat Ken. And then you think that that's gonna be the end of the series, but no, we still got a good 20 or so episodes left of this crap to review. So yeah, it's like a really average, like, just attacking a city. Not even, like, any insane plan to make it interesting. You're like, yeah, we're just gonna blow up the buildings, blow up everything, basically. Try to blow up Ken. And, you know, we're just gonna dispatch our entire military. No more insane plots to actually get people interested in today's story. This week we're just going to blow up all the cities. Alright. So yeah, they get prepared to launch this counterattack. Not much happens. You know, of course, Ken comes in, saves the day all by himself somehow. They have a couple of, like, battleships that they have in the sky, but then Ken really only blows up one and shoots a couple of Ceruleans through windows. And apparently that's just enough for the Ceruleans to go like, oh shit, we didn't think this through, and immediately make their entire space military retreat back to the ocean or wherever they live. So yeah, it's a really boring episode. The only thing that does make it interesting, though, is, like, the first half is this, like, filler, where they don't, like, do a clip show, thank God. They don't recycle animation, but they do have some good self-reflection and some different you know, Jerulean perspectives advising the king. You know, you have the king that's like, oh, let's launch this, like, the Jerulean king to be specific, that's like, oh, let's launch this massive counterattack against the city, and then you have, like, some different Jeruleans, you know, like, one of them's like, hey, why don't we just use another insane plot so the humans don't immediately dispatch their military or dispatch Chargeman Ken to defeat us. Then you have, like, other aliens that are like, hey, why don't we just give up on Earth? You know, is it really worth our time because they're putting up too much of a fight? Can we just find another planet similar to Earth that doesn't have such a, you know, resistant population that's hard to take over? And then you have, like, another guy saying, like, hey, you know, instead of trying to blow up the cities and focusing all of our manpower on the cities, we should definitely focus all of our manpower on Chargeman Ken, since he's, like, one of the sole reasons we can't even invade Earth. If we get rid of him, then we can easily get rid of the other cities, but first we gotta get rid of Ken. And of course the king doesn't listen. He orders the cities to be destroyed and then immediately retreats the military once Ken blows up one ship. So yeah, this, they call him the Demon King, but he's basically the king of the Jeruleans. He's a terrible fucking king and a terrible, military leader, because he honestly has no idea. It's like 47 episodes and he's not even close to, you know, this episode he says the Jeruleans are close to being able to invade Earth, but no, they're not even close. They're no closer than they were in episode 1. So yeah, it's a really average, you know, attacking all of the cities, doing a massive counterattack story. Ken defeats them pretty quickly. The only reason it's a B rank is just because they have a really interesting, like, town hall meeting with the Jeruleans, and they do another, like, exchange of perspectives and different plans and opinions towards the Empire. So that's kind of cool that they have, like, that town hall meeting before they dispatch the Jerulean military to, you know, kind of like self-evaluate themselves and see, like, if this is really the best course of action, even though none of them really try to challenge the king that much. They just kind of put out their ideas and then immediately don't really do much after that. But that definitely got my interest at the beginning. So really interesting beginning, really crappy middle and end. So yeah, solid B rank episode. Kind of recommend you watch the first half just for the town hall thing that the Jeruleans do, but then after that, just, it has a strong beginning, just goes completely downhill from there. Solid B rank episode. Alright, episode 48, Showdown on the Solitary Island. So, you know, basically the whole synopsis of this episode, I guess, is the Jeruleans have tried all these insane plots, and finally, they're just like, fuck it, why don't we just tie him to an island? Like, we've tried shooting BB guns at him, we've tried exploding scientists and transforming into a ridiculous amount of people and launching a giant counterattack, and they're just like, fuck it, we'll just, like, tie him up. We'll tie him to this rock island thing in the middle of the ocean and see what happens from there. Just, like, let him starve or something. But it's really weird. So they're able to successfully roofie him, but they don't poison him. So basically they have a Jerulean posed as, like, an elderly woman, and then of course, you know, like, Ken helps her against, like, either attackers or crossing the street, I don't remember, but then he goes to this old person's house and they roofie him. Now, why they didn't just go ahead and poison him, I have no idea, but nah, they just decided to roofie him and tie him up to an island instead, and then, you know, let him starve, feed him to the vultures, all that good stuff. But yeah, so then it's, like, really sunny, and they have, like, a weird lure implication, because basically what they say in this episode is that they put some kind of drug, so they roofied him, and then they also put some kind of drug that made it so he couldn't use his transformation powers in sunlight. But then, like, the rain comes and he sticks his tongue out and he drinks the rainwater on the island, and somehow that shares the effects of the drug, and then even though there's no daylight left because it's like a storm, he's able to do, like, the charge and go thing and power up. So yeah, I mean, it's just an average episode. It really doesn't make sense because, like, there's no sunlight. And then they say, like, drugs can cancel out his abilities, but then water just, like, washes it away. Like, I don't even know how to explain it any better. It just makes, like, no sense. They try to explain it, but it's a lot. They just pull a lot of shit out of their ass this episode. So yeah, it's just a really boring, really boring plot. Really bad pacing, doesn't make that much sense. It isn't even really an insane plot to keep you interested, 'cause it's literally just him tied to an island. Yeah, so this episode just does not really have that much to offer. This island episode is definitely a solid C rank. It isn't even like an interesting island, it's just literally a rock in the middle of the ocean. I don't even think you can call that an island. But then again, I'm not like an island scientist, so I wouldn't be able to say if that counts as an island, but yeah. Solid C rank episode. Okay, another average episode. Episode 49, The Delinquent's True Colors. This is, so basically there's like this school bully dude that has a motorcycle that's like picking on the other kids. And I mean, it starts kind of interesting because then you think it's like an anti-bullying PSA and Ken tries to help, but the delinquent is just a total dick, doesn't really have anything interesting. And then they pull out the old, like, oh, he's just a Druilian doing, like, lizard people bullshit. Yeah, so this episode doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, I guess it's a good bullying PSA. And the motorcycle looked cool, but really badly animated. And it was kind of interesting seeing Ken try to help, like, another human being before he learns that it's an alien instead of just, like, shooting first and trying to have that empathy. But yeah, it's, like, not really... The delinquent isn't an interesting character. And it's just really bad pacing, and it just never really goes anywhere with this episode. Definitely a solid C rank episode. I don't really remember much about this. I mean, I guess in my notes it says that they had an interesting punch into the face that was satisfying, but other than like one punch, there's not really anything else to keep you engaged. So it's definitely a solid C rank episode. Okay, episode 50, another episode. This is Save the Orphan Center. Yeah, so I mean... Oh man, this sounds like really messed up, but basically a whole plot behind this episode is Druilians adopt these orphans, and they plan to use them as slaves. That's literally all that happens, is that these poor little orphans that are sad get adopted, and then they're so happy. And then they become slaves. But then Ken comes, saves the day, and then they go back to the orphanage, and then they try to force like a laugh track moment at the end, but it's so forced, because they go back to the orphanage and they're sad children. So yeah, it's kind of good pacing. They immediately get into the action. Ken discovers that they're Druilians pretty quick, and they don't really do a drawn out mystery with it. And then also they have a cool thing where they have like a destroyed base, actually, that they're having the orphans rebuild, so it makes you kind of wonder if there's like another superhero besides Ken that's like taking out the Druilians, even though this like destroyed base in the middle of the desert is never brought up again. And they don't even say like who destroyed it. So yeah, kind of a cool lore implication, but doesn't really go anywhere. Yeah, I mean, solid B rank episode. It is kind of interesting just because it has good pacing and somewhat good animation, and they have a really cool setting with this kind of like broken down abandoned base in the desert. But other than those things, it's really close to a B. Actually, yeah, it is. It's a solid B rank episode. Okay, finally a somewhat good episode with an interesting character, even if it's a dog. So this is episode 51, Stray Dog Koro. I hope I pronounced his name right. So the whole plot behind this is there's this like girl, and she has this dog that she can't really like take care of anymore because they're moving to an apartment. So it kind of starts sad at first because she just like ties this poor dog, but then eventually Ken sees this dog getting like abused by other children or something, so he's like, you know what, I'm gonna make this my pet, I'm gonna train him, he's gonna be a superhero dog, and we're gonna have like fun times together. And then of course the Druilians come in. They get Ken in this like really badly animated net, and then they kill the dog, and then Ken kills the Druilians, and then they have like a pretty sad funeral for the dog, even though it's 5 minutes episode, so they couldn't get really too attached to the dog. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting episode. Dog was an interesting character, seeing how he was like so attached to his like original owner, but then he grew a liking to Ken's kindness towards the dog, but then that kindness made the dog try to protect Ken, and then the dog died. It's a shame though, it was like a really cool doggo, looks pretty good. And that was like really interesting with this episode, because the dog and Barukan, their models this episode looked really good, but then on the other side, Ken and Karen's like animation cells, like their models looked like nightmare fuel. Like I don't know like what it was, but like whoever was in charge of drawing the dog and Barukan did a pretty good job, and then whoever was in charge of drawing the animation cells for Ken and his sister Karen did a really terrible job. Even the Ceruleans looked very off-model and awkward. I think there were, like, a couple of them were miscolored a good couple of times. But I mean, yeah, the pacing of the story was good. It was an interesting character. The animation, though, was, like, really bad, and the net looked very... I don't know who drew the net, but I think they had a stroke while drawing that, so... Yeah, solid A rank episode, really close to being an S, but unfortunately I think they could have explored the dog's backstory a little bit more. It was kind of forced. And then also the animation was just really nightmare fuel today. But definitely a solid A rank episode, and I would recommend you watch this episode about this poor doggo. Alright, episode 52, Blow Up the Undersea Oil Field. So it says, like the name of the title implies, there's these Ceruleans that attack an undersea oil field. And then the problem with this oil field is, you know, like, because all the other times when they attack buildings and stuff that are critical to the humans, they explain, like, oh, if we explode this building, or if we explode these transport stations or whatever, then the human society will crumble. But they actually have a unique reason for attacking this oil field. So, of course, you know, it's so the humans can't get oil, that's like one side of it, but they actually explain that this undersea oil field is being built and just became functional, but they built it way too close to the Ceruleans' like main ocean base that they hang out in, like their underwater building thing where they keep all their ships. And it's interesting, so that's their main reason, is because they don't want their main ocean base to be discovered by the Earthlings or the robots. So they're like, okay, we're just gonna blow up this oil field, and then we're gonna like release this like news statement to the Earthlings saying we did it so they wouldn't have their oil, so that way they don't suspect that they're insanely close to our main base. Because I guess they built this close to the main Cerulean base without knowing it, so I mean, it's pretty cool motivation. Yeah, and then the Ceruleans actually have a really interesting battle, like, between the robot workers. So they have, like, this, like, robot army extracting the underwater oil. And then the Ceruleans fight them. Actually really good laser beam sound effects and somewhat good animation. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. And of course, you know, Ken and Barukan are sent as investigators. They kind of do another mystery thing, but they don't drag it out as some of the other episodes. So it's like Ken's pretty much immediately knows it's Ceruleans because he finally has some common sense, so he's able to, you know, go in there and, you know, pew pew one frame explosion some Ceruleans' butts. And yeah, overall a pretty interesting episode. I'd give it a solid B rank because it's your average, they gotta explode a building, but it's a building or, well, really like an oil thing. It's basically they have to explode this place, but they have a unique reason to do so. And then this place is actually guarded by somewhat competent robot workers that put up an interesting fight. And of course, they have sound effects, so just the fact that it has sound effects makes this a B, immediately raises it a rank, because now all these episodes have sound effects. So yeah, Blow Up the Undersea Oil Field, a solid B rank episode. Okay, yeah, so another somewhat interesting episode. So this is episode 53, The Suspicious Bride. But I put The Sus Bride. I think that's a better title for this, The Sus, because this bride is sus. Anyway, so basically it says the title implies the Ceruleans pose as like a wife. So this guy gets like married to this Cerulean, except the Cerulean's disguised as a human, so of course this guy doesn't know that's a Cerulean, and this guy just so happens to be like a marine scientist or something, so he's been working on a lot of like top secret submarine plans, and the Ceruleans, I don't know why they can't just like blow up the submarines, but they really want to have the blueprints to the submarines before they blow shit up, so that's their game plan, is to impersonate this, or no, not even impersonate his wife, but like literally become his wife. So they literally, it's implied that they date for months and then have this marriage at the beginning. And then this poor Marine is betrayed at the end. He learns that his wife was actually a Cerulean spy the entire time. But then, you know, at the end, they're all pretty happy and saying like, oh, better luck with wife number 2. Yeah, so it's an interesting episode. They don't really do much with the whole, like, wife. They could have had, like, an interesting, like, what if a Cerulean actually fell in love with a human? But they don't really do anything with it besides the whole fact that it's a spy, and then the spy gets, like, found out by Ken and pew-pew lasered pretty quickly. Yeah, so almost an interesting character, but they don't really do anything with it. A really good undersea battle, somewhat good pacing. They do the whole mystery thing pretty well, although not really. Like they start out with the mystery, but then they reveal it pretty quick. It's a Cerulean kind of early, but then afterwards they make sure they don't do the whole like mystery thing very well, and Ken's pretty much suspicious immediately of the bride because it is called the Suspicious Bride, so they're able to do a good episode. So yeah, good pacing, good undersea battle, somewhat interesting character, waifu Cerulean person, but they don't really do much with him or her. So yeah, solid B rank episode. Okay, what a interesting episode we have here. So episode 54, Spooky! Exclamation point. The Waxwork Museum. So basically this kind of is a similar vibe to Young Yuichi, in which the Ceruleans want to convince a random human to just burn shit down for no reason. But so basically what the Ceruleans do is there's this like waxwork museum, and then there's like this worker who's like lazy and unmotivated at the beginning and just kind of like uninspired with life. And they go to him, but then they pose as these like wax statues, and these wax statues are supposed to be like celebrities, but they're really like history figures, which is really weird. So they have like a purple hat Abraham Lincoln is like one of the wax statues at this museum. And then they also have Hitler and Goldilocks just vibing there. So yeah, apparently according to this anime, Hitler's a celebrity, so that's yeah, that's interesting. But anyway, so they impersonate these wax statues, and then they try to convince this worker that the wax statues are alive, and that the only way to stop them from, like, I guess taking over the world or something, or hunting the museum, is like burn the museum down. So I mean, it doesn't make that much sense though, because they just want this specific building for no reason to be burnt down, just because I guess it's funny to the Ceruleans. Yeah, I'm not sure, their motivations aren't really clear in this episode. So yeah, it was interesting character growth, because the security guard went from like kind of like lazy, unmotivated at the end, kind of like uninspired with life, and then he's about to burn them down, because then he goes from like uninspired to like scared of life. But then he has like sees Ken save him, and he sees how like Ken is so dedicated to life, I guess, that he becomes motivated to like work harder at his job and actually like inspire other people, like Ken has inspired him by sharing his knowledge of the wax statues. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of, they don't really explain the character development well, but they do have somewhat of an interesting character of the week and somewhat of an interesting character arc, even though it ain't the main focus of the episode. And also, I do like how they specify that the wax statues aren't actually alive, and that they're just Ceruleans in disguise. Yeah. Let's see here. So, I mean, that's about it. Interesting character, an interesting setting, kind of like a Scooby-Doo-esque mystery, except not really. Yeah, and I just cannot believe I saw Hitler in a wax museum. That was just a really shocking moment. I'll have to, like, zoom into that, and then you can be the judge if that's Hitler or not, but I'm, like, 99% sure that's wax Hitler, and the Ceruleans were trying to convince him to burn wax Hitler. Purple hat Abraham Lincoln, Goldilocks, the match girl from Japanese folklore. Yeah, it's just, like, a really wild episode, really interesting episode. You know what? I think I'm going to give this a solid A rank. This is a solid A rank episode, really close to being an S if they focused more on the workers, character development and explaining that a little bit better. But yeah, a really good episode, solid A rank. Highly recommended. Okay, another somewhat interesting episode. This is episode 55, The Ones They Met in Egypt. Yeah, so this is like one of the few that actually doesn't, take place in Japan. This actually takes place in Egypt, which is surprising. So basically it starts out they're watching this wildlife documentary, and then Ken's parents tell like Ken and Baruchan like it's time for bed. I guess like you can only watch these nature documentaries in the middle of the night for some reason, I don't know. And then Ken and Baruchan's like, hey, we got a better idea. So then tomorrow they're like, why don't, instead of watching Africa on TV, that's like Africa Wildlife, National Geographic shit, why don't we just fly there on our spaceship? So they go ahead and they fly to Egypt, or they at least try to, but then Baruchan starts, throwing a tantrum like he usually does, and he wants to drive Ken's ship, and then Ken's like, fine, but don't crash it. And then what does Baruchan do? Of course, he crashes the ship into Egypt instead of Africa. Although I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I think Egypt is in Europe? Or it's kind of close to the border of Africa and Europe. Okay, anyway, that's besides the point. So yeah, there's an interesting setting, and then basically they get there, and they find Jerulians stealing Egyptian treasure, because then I guess the thought is that they'll steal the treasure, and then they can buy weapons from, even though the Jerulians always say the humans are like technologically superior to the humans, but despite that, they're like, yeah, we'll steal the treasure, and then we can buy like guns and stuff from the humans. So it doesn't really make that much sense, but it's an interesting motivation, I guess. Interesting motivation. So then Ken arrives, pew pew, laser beam, like one frame explosions, and the Jerulians die pretty quick, and they're like, oh man, we better go home, because maybe we might get grounded if our parents figure out that we we tried to fly to Africa without permission or something. So they just like fly off. Baruchan's like, oh, can I drive the ship again? Laugh track ensues. And then yeah, that's basically the episode. Just like a really cool kind of like adventure in Egypt, and then they like catch Jerulian stealing treasure. So yeah, like an interesting Jerulian motivation. And it's also interesting seeing that like the Jerulians aren't the reason that Ken goes there. Ken just kind of like stumbles on them. So kind of a good change of pace for the story. And it's also just interesting seeing like, I guess like they go to all these different like bases in Japan or whatever. It's kind of interesting seeing like for one of the only times they actually go to a different country, especially kind of solves the problem of like, hey, if he's a kid, why do Jerulians keep attacking Japan when they can just attack the rest of the world? Then Ken would have no way to get there. Oh, but then they actually explain that like Ken's ship has some kind of like super speed option that he can get to, let's say, I think they said like he can get to Japan, from Japan to Egypt in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So, I mean, definitely Ken can get around the world pretty quick. So that actually solves that plot hole surprisingly, which that's like more than like Sailor Moon was able to do. Now, why the Jerulians keep attacking Japan and don't go for these other countries until like the very, very end, I have no idea. But, if they did that, Ken could go and, pew pew their butts. So I guess that solves that plot hole, which is really interesting to learn. Now, so yeah, interesting episode, interesting setting, interesting like motivation for the Jerulians. Unfortunately, though, does really feel like an average plot that just has a few of those things to make it somewhat more interesting than the average cookie cutter plot. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good episode, so I'd give this a solid B rank episode. Solid B rank episode. Okay, episode 56, Runaway Horseback Ken. So basically, Ken and his family, they decided to go on this another kind of like vacation kind of deal. And the dad's like, you know what, Ken, when I was your age, I rode a horse, so you're gonna ride a horse, your sister's gonna ride a horse. We're all riding horses this episode. This is the horse episode. So they go ahead, they get to this like horse ranch, and Ken picks out his horse, but then, so this horse was trained by the Jerulians to try to murder Ken. So what happens is they give Ken this horse, and then the horse just starts full-on galloping towards the ocean to try to drown him, I guess. Or no, I don't even think they try to take him to the ocean. I don't know, but like the horse just runs away and he's gonna take Ken somewhere to like kidnap him or something. I don't know. So this horse is out to get Ken. Ken's riding the horse, and the horse is out of control. Okay. So then the dad's... And this is what's like the really funny part, is the dad's like, okay, I'm gonna get into the car, come on Karen, come on Baruchan, we're gonna go save Ken. So Ken's running around on this horse, and then Ceruleans appear on their own horses, I guess. And then Ken just starts like laser beaming everything. And then while all these like laser beams are going on, Ken's father's like in hot pursuit. And then when you least expect it, Ken's dad, out of nowhere, hits this horse with his car, so he isekais another living creature. And it just comes out of nowhere, though. You just think he's, like, following Ken, but no, his plan the whole time was to hit the horse with his car. That's the dad's first instinct, is if there's a problem, you just hit things with the car. So yeah, then they save the day, and then they go back, have some wholesome family vibes with the horses, and then the episode ends. Yeah, so I don't know like what else to say. Like the part where the dad just hit the horse with the car made me die laughing. And there's also some somewhat good animation, somewhat good pacing, a somewhat like really good battle with like all the laser beams going on. Then Ken's dad just like hitting the horse with his car out of nowhere. It was a really interesting battle actually. And plus they had some really good like wholesome like fun family vibes going on with the, you know, going out to the horse track to experience like horse riding. So yeah, it's a pretty good episode. I'd give this a A-rank episode. Not much happens, but I mean, there's like literally no problems I have with it. I was engaged, and yeah, it's pretty good. Solid A-rank. Okay, episode 57, the Antarctic amusement park. So yeah, this is just another really generic cookie-cutter average episode. So basically, the family goes on vacation to this Antarctic amusement park, which is kind of interesting, but they've literally already... It's like they call it an amusement park, but really it just looks like the North Pole with like skis. I don't know, like we already saw the same thing in the Mummy episode, and the Mummy episode's like winter aesthetic looked a lot better than this one. But anyway, so they go to the amusement park, they're having fun, then they go for another Karen is taken hostage episode. There are laser beam sound effects though, which does make it good, and there is some of an interesting battle, and Baruchan being useful. Okay, so it actually seems like this episode has some good things going for it, but such an average plot. Man, this is like a really hard one, because this is like right in between a B rank and a C rank. It's really average, but there are a few good things, but this does not get your interest. Let's see, where am I gonna rank this actually? I forgot to rank this in my notes, so... You know what, I think we're actually gonna go for a B rank. It's really boring, but there is a few interesting moments. Like, Baruchan actually somewhat saves the day during the battle, because he tries to defeat the Ceruleans by himself, even though he kind of gets wrecked immediately, and then he's just kind of like left in the ocean to freeze to death, I guess, even though he's a robot. How robots get cold, I don't really know. And it's also another like fun family vibes on laser beam sound effects. So yeah, I mean, there's some good thing. Definitely would be higher if they didn't just go for the take care and hostage plot that they've already reused like 20 times by now. But yeah, somewhat of a good episode. I think I'll go ahead and give this one a B rank. This is a somewhat boring B rank, but it's still a B rank. Okay, another somewhat above average episode, but still kind of an average episode, but not really. So episode 58, Circus of, and I don't even know the title, because some translations say Circus of Friends and Circus of Fiends. And one of them even has like W, like Fiends. So yeah, I'm just gonna go Circus of Friends. So the whole story behind this is, you know, Ken's family, I guess, goes to the circus, because the circus is in town, because they went horseback riding. They went to Antarctica, they went to Egypt. They've actually been going on a lot of different vacations the last couple episodes, which is kind of surprising. But this time they're going to like this circus thing. But then the problem is the Ceruleans have infiltrated the circus, and they've trained the lions to attack Ken when they command them to. So they got these, I guess they got lions from Africa, which would actually be a pretty cool callback to a few episodes ago. So that's actually a pretty cool piece of continuity. Because they like literally reused the, although it is probably laziness though, 'cause I swear they reused the lion animation cell that they used in the Egypt episode. But yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, man, I'm sorry, I can't talk today. It's a pretty good episode. They don't really explain... They actually explain the Jerulean's motivations really well, because the Jerulean in charge of, like, training the lions and sending the lions to attack Ken makes it very clear that, like, he doesn't want to invade Earth, but, like, just because Ken has killed so many Jeruleans up until this point, with, like, one-frame explosions, that he's gonna send the lions to chew Ken alive or something. But yeah, you know, Ken saves the day. It's actually an interesting battle, because at first he has to, like, put the lions to sleep, because he knows that the lions are actually real lions, and they wouldn't be attacking him if they weren't being controlled and trained by the Jeruleans. So he like peacefully puts the lions to sleep, which, you know, I guess PETA would like that more than like hitting a horse with a car. So he puts the lions to sleep. He basically, like, you know, sleep powders them. And then he one-frame explosions the Jerulean in charge of the lions, like the lion trainer. And then he's able to pretty quickly defeat him. And then they just go back to, you know, happy family fun times at the circus, like nothing happened, even though they almost got killed by lions. So yeah, really good episode, really good sound effects and animation, even though they basically reused the animation cells for the lions. But it's like, hey, the animation cells for the lions were actually pretty well animated, so I'm okay if they reuse them to be lazy. I mean, like, what else are you going to expect from the 70s anime? So yeah, kind of a cool setting with the circus. Good lions. Really cool seeing, like, Ken versus the lions and having, like, sleep powder them. And then pretty good motivations for the Jeruleans. So I think this is a solid, you know what? I think this is a solid A-ranked episode, because it definitely gets your interest with these lions. So I would give this a solid A rank. Okay, episode 59, we're almost there. Forest of Terror. So basically this episode, oh man, it's so weird that they put a whole bunch of, like, family vacation episodes together, but yeah, this is another family vacation episode. Maybe this was supposed to be, like, during Ken's, like, summer break or something, but this is Forest of Terror. So Ken's family goes to the forest to go camping, right? Wholesome family fun time camping. Except there's these hunters, and they shoot this, like, blue jay. Or at least I think that's what you call the bird. Anyway, they shoot this blue jay, and then it's basically like, oh man, this bird was injured. We gotta go save the bird and stand up for the wildlife. Because apparently it's not hunting season yet, so, like, the hunters are humans, but they're breaking the law by shooting the bird. So they're gonna nurse the bird back to health, because, you know, Ken has morals for... He has, like... He's a psychopath, but he has, like, some kind of morals, so he takes the bird back to the family, and they plan on trying to save the bird's life. Okay? So then the hunters are like, screw it, we've heard of this kid, he's been shooting aliens for a while now, so we're just gonna leave him alone before he, like, calls the cops on us for, like, illegally shooting an endangered bird or something. So then they go off to do their thing. Ken and his family are saving this bird. And then the hunters discover this secret Jerulean base in the middle of the forest, because the Jeruleans are like, you know what, the humans are getting very close to discovering our main base in the ocean, so we're going to try to build a fake main base in the forest, so that way, like, the human, like, spy planes can spot it. And then they think they found the main base, but then we can still be in the ocean and plan our, like, major attack against the Earth. So it's like, I don't know, the Jeruleans this episode have some, like, really wild, like, fourth dimensional chess play thinking there, like putting a fake main base in the forest out in the open, so their actual main base in the ocean doesn't get discovered. Some very fourth dimensional moves right there. So yeah, then the hunters stumble upon this, like, forest base, and then the Jeruleans threaten to kill them, and then the hunters and Jeruleans have a fight, but they realize that the bullets aren't really doing anything against the Jeruleans, so, you know, the hunters scream for help, and then Ken, you know, saves the day. One-frame explosions the Jeruleans in the main base. But then Ken is actually kind of clever, and he's like, hey, you know, they don't really have many other spaceships here, and they don't have, for being their main base, they don't have very many personnel, so Ken is actually pretty quick to discover that that ain't the main Jerulean base, so I guess their plan. Their plan did not work very well. Ken saves the day. Then I guess the hunters and Ken's family team up to save the bird's life, because Ken, by saving the hunters, Ken was able to give the hunters, like, a change of character. Well, is your like Ken? They didn't really explain it well. Like they don't explain anything well in this anime. But I think what happened was like the hunters were almost hunted by the Ceruleans, and then that kind of made them realize how they made the blue jay bird that they shot feel. So they had to change the heart, and they decided to go camping with Ken's family. And yeah, really interesting episode. Really good character design actually. This episode, the characters were pretty on model, and the hunters were really interesting character of the weeks. It had really good character development, and then also really interesting motivations from the Ceruleans that definitely kept me on the edge of my seat, like seeing if this whole fake main base plan would work. So yeah, honestly, really good episode, really good battle. They actually have really good sound effects, really good like motivations for like all the characters, because like Ken's family wants to save this bird, Ken's family wants to go camping, these hunters want to kill this bird, but then they have a change of heart, and the Ceruleans want to kill the hunters, and so they have time to like build their fake main base or whatever. So yeah, really interesting motivations. This is actually definitely a solid S-rank episode, really good animation, really good everything actually. And I highly recommend you give this episode a watch. Definitely a solid S-rank episode. Oh my god, okay, we are at 60 episodes, and for the first time, I'm surprised they haven't done this, because maybe this wasn't really a popular anime trope in the 70s, but they finally, after 60 episodes, had an anime beach episode. Okay, so episode 60, Tsunami Attack. Oh man, and for being a beach episode though, this is definitely one of the most lackluster beach episodes I've ever seen, so this is a solid C rank. So the whole plot behind this episode is that the Ceruleans build this like artificial tsunami thing. They like call it a tsunami, but really it's like a drain in the middle of the ocean, like suck the swimmers up. So they suck all these people into this drain thing, and then they put them in this realm. Now they could have just drowned them, but no, they built this gas chamber underneath the ocean. Now, why they didn't fill this chamber up with water? That would seem like it would be the easier thing, but no, they decided to go for a gas chamber. And then their whole thought again is like, oh, they take all these people hostages, and then Ken will come, they can fight Ken. But then of course Ken comes, saves the day, saves all the people, defeats all the Ceruleans that are stationed there. Then they immediately go back to the beach, and then they try to do like another like really cringy joke and have a laugh track at the end, and everyone's pretty happy at the beach, even though they almost like died in a gas chamber underneath the ocean. So yeah, I mean, it's as boring as it is, not as exciting as it sounds. It's definitely a solid C rank. It doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, at least it isn't like a Karen's taken hostage episode again, but it's like everyone's taken hostage, so it's like, what do you expect? So yeah, not much happens. Ken saves the day. I don't even remember much from this episode, so yeah, definitely a solid C rank. I would definitely skip. Even though it's a beach episode, you think being a beach episode would be fun, but they just don't really do anything at the beach. So yeah, definitely not B for beach, but definitely C for average cookie cutter episode. Solid C rank. Okay, we're almost there. Episode 61. Baruchan's friend, their old friend, pays a visit. So yeah, this is basically like another Dynamite in the Brain situation where there's a new character of the week. This time it's a robot that claims to know Baruchan, but actually doesn't, because he's was built and sent by the Ceruleans to explode Ken's house. So basically a Dynamite in the brain, but it's Dynamite in the robot, basically. Except this time, though, they're smart and they don't spoil it in the title. So that's good. And then also Ken's this random I don't know why you... like, mind-reading telepathical powers return, so he's able to hear the bomb. Because, you know, the Ceruleans didn't learn anything from last time. So yeah, so it's like this robot, it's like a goofier version of Baruchan comes to visit, and then Baruchan gets a little bit jealous of this new robot. He's kind of being replaced and the children like him and he's making the children laugh, but then Baruchan learns that he was sent by the Ceruleans. Ceruleans kidnap Baruchan because he overhears the plan, and So they're having like dinner with this robot, and I like that Ken's family just assumes that like Baruchan's just being a little bitch in the corner somewhere, just like sulking. And they don't realize he's been kidnapped by the Ceruleans until Ken hears like the ticking of the dynamite, I guess. So you know, Ken charges even though it's like the middle of the night with this dinner. He throws, instead of throwing the exploding robot out of his what's the word, out of his spaceship, he just at the Cerulean spaceship, he just throws this exploding robot into the middle of the ocean, which is actually a really cool splash. And then the rest of it is just like generic, like Ken breaks into the Cerulean spaceship to rescue Baruchan. You know, pew pew, one frame explosions, they leave the spaceship. Pew pew, and then the spaceship explodes. There is one really interesting piece, another really interesting piece of animation. I think they probably recycled it though, but like Ken jumps out of his spaceship and then breaks through the window mid-air of the Cerulean spaceship, which I thought was a really cool, I don't know, like if it was better animated, it'd be a really cool moment, but unfortunately like the animation just does not make it look interesting, but I thought it was a pretty cool heroic thing that Ken did, pretty brave. So yeah. Oh, and then plus like the robot, you know, Ken could have tried removing the dynamite from the robot's brain and throw the dynamite out of the robot's brain. Like, I don't think he had to kill the robot. I don't know, it seems like, even though like they're robots, it seems like Baruchan and this random robot that Cerulean built have some level of free will, so it isn't like he was being directly controlled and voiced and everything by a Cerulean, so I think he could have, you know, saved the robot instead of like Ken being an asshole and just like throwing him into the middle of the ocean to explode. But yeah, interesting character of the week, interesting, like an interesting character design for that character of the week, especially it being a robot, and I think they were able to do everything pretty well, and I like that they actually, you know, because, like, I've not been a big fan of Baruchan, but I like how they admit that, like, yeah, you know, he's probably just off somewhere being salty, being, like, toxic jelly, pouting somewhere, because he's, like, jealous of this new robot. So I like how they address Baruchan's character flaws. And then Baruchan actually thanks Ken for saving him at the end. So Baruchan is definitely, you know, he's still jealous, but he's a lot better in this episode than Ken's girlfriend. Like, that episode, he was really terrible. In this episode, he's still jealous, but, like, they actually, you know, address that he's jealous, so Baruchan Baruchan's good in this episode, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, solid A rank episode, really close to being an S rank, but I wish they would have explored more of if, the robot of the week had free will, or if he was being directly controlled by the Ceruleans. Unfortunately, they never really explore that, very well. But yeah, solid A-rank episode. I had a lot of fun. I was, you know, on the edge of my seat a little bit. Really interesting battle at the end, even if the animation kind of limited it. So yeah, solid A-rank episode. Really close to being an S-rank, but is a solid A-rank episode. And I'd recommend you give this a watch. Oh man, we've really hit rock bottom with this one. Okay, episode 62, Crisis at the Archaeological... I don't even know how you pronounce that. Cultural complex. Big word. Big brain time. Okay. I pronounced that good, right? Anyway. So, I don't even know what happens in this episode. Basically, they do this, like, murder mystery thing where these workers on this I'm just gonna call it the farming complex, right? So it's just, like, farming complex that has all these, like, crops and stuff that's, like, basically, like, Russian serfdom almost. Except they don't really explain it that well. So if I assume it right, there's, like, plots of land that these farmers collectively work together, and then they put all their food into this complex thing to store it. So basically, I think this is even the same thing that the Ceruleans, like, literally destroyed a good 20 of episodes ago. So yeah, the plan is that the Ceruleans are secretly murdering these, like, farmers or something. They don't really explain it well, but they're, like, murdering these farmers, I think. And their thought is if there's no farmers, there's going to be no food, and if there's no food, the humans will starve. So instead of trying to poison the food, we're just gonna murder all the farmers while no one's looking. And then the police that monitor this, like, farming complex are investigating these vaporized remains of these, what do you call them, farmers. So it's kind of like this murder mystery thing, like, oh man, you know, 60 episodes and they don't immediately suspect the Ceruleans, but it's like, Oh man, I wonder who is murdering all these farmers. It's almost like we have aliens that are trying to kill humanity every single week. Ah man, and it's just like really terrible animation, really bad pacing. Let's see. I don't remember where in the episode it was, but I have in my notes that the biggest hair on the screen yet was in the episode. Like the biggest noticeable hair almost took half the screen. And I don't even know how they didn't notice this hair. So if you watch Chargeman Ken, you'll know. But like every once in a while, you see this like weird like pubic hair on the edge of the screen that they accidentally take pictures of. Then usually they stay still. So that's like when they do it with the freeze frame. But this like fucking long ass pubic hair, thick, like really thick, long pubic hair moves around for multiple. Like a good solid 5 seconds, there's just pubic hair that's like moving around, this like long strand of it, and it's really gross. Then also there's just a lot of other problems too. It's like the models are really off, and plus like half of the episode they're on this car like driving around these farming complexes or these like plots of land, and they have no idea how to animate a car overhead. So I thought like the Murderous Highway was a really badly animated episode, but oh my god, this makes the highway episode look beautiful by comparison. There's a, like, I don't even know how to describe it. They just do not understand perspective at all. Like, they do not know how to drive moving cars. Like, it's literally a picture of a car that's like overhead, but it's like crooked the wrong way. And the perspective is just really weird. I just cannot even explain like the thought behind that. It's like someone with brain damage drew that and animated it all together. So yeah, like the characters are off model. The biggest pubic hair I've ever seen in this episode. It stays for a ridiculous amount of seconds. And really terrible, you know, like ending, really terrible story, really bad pacing. It's just a really bad episode. And so then this basically concludes with, you know, the Ceruleans being defeated pretty quickly with one-frame explosions. And then they try to like make you think it was actually a good episode by having like a sad like funeral at the end for all of the like farmer police officers that were vaporized by the Ceruleans, but like it doesn't go anywhere and the story's that bad that you literally do not care that these people are dead. So yeah, it's like a really average plot that makes no sense, does not even engage you in the slightest. This is by far, like, okay, so like Save Young Yuichi, that's my favorite episode. This right here, this is my least favorite episode. This is like the worst episode of anime I've ever seen. This is the worst episode of Chargeman Ken. This is like the worst of the worst. This is a solid D rank. You want to skip this. It's not even like so bad it's good territory, because some of these episodes are really bad, but like they have like a couple memes in them that make them like legendary. But no, there's nothing redeeming at this at all. There's no memes that can be made from this. There's like nothing to keep your interest. This is just a really bad episode. Really solid D rank, and I highly recommend you skip it. Okay, episode 63, Defeat the Murderous Boxer. You know, this is a really sad one because you think it's going to be an interesting character of the week, but no, it's just a Cerulean that poses as the boxer to murder Ken. They don't even do anything interesting with it. So basically there's this boxer that's actually Cerulean, and then he kills another boxer in the ring while Ken's watching, and that was his favorite boxer. I guess it's like, you know, he got punched too hard, so he died. And then, you know, Ken at first doesn't want to try to, like, seek revenge because it is a fellow human being, I guess, even though he is a murderer. And I'm pretty sure if you murder someone while boxing at that point, like, I don't know, it seems like someone should be liable if someone dies from being punched too hard. Like, some kind of lawsuit, some kind of something. But then they have a problem, though. So then Ken overhears the camera people, and they're like, hey, we cannot get this guy to appear on camera because, you know, like if a Cerulean, they never explain it very well, but if a Cerulean is transformed and they're doing their like lizard people bullshit, they cannot reflect in mirrors and they cannot appear in a camera. So I guess they're trying to get like photos and videos of this boxing event, and this guy just is not appearing, and no one realizes he's a Cerulean. And then Ken's pretty quick. Luckily, Ken is not that stupid as the audience and the camera people, so Ken overhears that and pretty, quickly after like 60 episodes or so, knows that the Jerulians are up to something. So he goes in, challenges the boxer, and then somehow punches the boxer so hard that he transforms back to a Jerulian. And then he just defeats the other Jerulians, and then the episode ends. So I mean, it's kind of a cool setting being at a boxing ring, but other than that, they don't really do anything. And like I said, it's such a shame too, because they don't have anything to keep your interest. It's like way too fast-paced of an episode. And like you read the title, right? And it's like defeat the murderous boxer, and it's like the same thing with the delinquent episode. You think it's going to be like a really interesting episode of the week, really really interesting character of the week, but they do nothing with this boxer. Like, he doesn't think he's a human. He doesn't actually want to become a boxer or anything. No, it's just like another Jerulian of the week that wants to kill Ken. And that was a really, really bad shame, because I thought there'd be like a boxer of the week that'd be an interesting character, but they just do like nothing with it at all. And the episode is just really fast, and it feels like it ends like way sooner than it should. So this 5-minute format definitely does not help this episode out at all with keeping my interest. But I mean, there's nothing I really hate about it. So yeah, this episode is definitely a solid C rank episode, really close to being like a B or an A if they did interesting stuff with the boxing character, but they just do nothing interesting with them at all. So this is definitely a solid C rank episode. Okay, we're almost there. Just 2 more episodes left. And actually, this is the last episode before the finale, so let's get on to it. Episode 64, Explosion! Exclamation point. The Mammoth Control Center. So yeah, not much actually happens in this. Basically, the Jerulians, there's like this like supercomputer building thing that like is there in a like futuristic society, like year like 2200 or something, right? And they have this like computer tower center thing that does all the computer stuff for their futuristic society. So it like controls the sidewalks, controls the TV broadcasts, controls like the power, basically controls everything. If this center's exploded, everyone's fucked. Alright, so the Jerulians explode the center, and now the center's exploded and the power's supposed to be out, yet they have a TV broadcast to let Ken know, like, oh, the center's been exploded, we wonder who did it. So already there's like a massive plot hole that like the power's supposed to be out, yet they can watch TV. So yeah, they couldn't have any other cool interactions. Or not interactions, like any other reasons for Ken to like learn about this. So, already off the bat, a major plot hole. It's just like a lot of awkward pacing and exposition for this computer center and this like TV broadcast letting Ken know it's exploded. And now keep in mind, right? We are episode 64. 64 episodes of this bullshit. And Ken does not immediately goes back to like episode 1 mode and does not immediately suspect that the Jerulians are behind this attack. So it's like this like murder mystery thing, except explosion mystery, where Ken and his father go investigate like who blew up the center. And it's like, oh, I wonder who did it. But unsurprisingly, it's the Jerulians, and then Ken defeats them pretty quickly. Even though now I'd argue, like, is it really a victory if the major computer that controls everything in society was exploded? I don't know, they treat it as a victory, but as I see it, like, their society is crippled, because, like, the Jerulians explode this center that, like, does all of the futuristic operations for the day-to-day lives of all these, futuristic, like, utopia citizens. And, of course, like, Ken killed the Jerulians who did it, but, like, the building is still exploded. So, like, I don't think anyone won this episode. Well, maybe Jerulians won, but then they just immediately died. Yeah, so it's like a train wreck of an episode, makes no sense. Really frustrating that after 65 episodes, Ken doesn't recognize that it's like the Jerulians behind it, but hey, I mean, I guess like continuity's thrown out the window, and it's very possible that this isn't even the official production order of the episodes, but this is just the order of the episodes I was given, so I'm gonna assume that this was meant to be the last episode before the finale. So yeah, just like a really average, boring episode with like nothing redeeming about it at all. So yeah, definitely solid C rank. Just really meh episode, does not get my attention. And this has like plot holes that make no sense. Solid C rank episode. Okay. Oh man, it's been hours, but we are finally here after like weeks of fucking work on this. Okay. Episode 65, the final episode. Victory, Chargeman Ken. Alright, so it looks like after 65 episodes, they still haven't learned that like titles can spoil the plot of the episode. So, you know, the Ceruleans are like, okay, we're so close to defeating these humans, even though they're not. So they're like, the demons, the king of the Ceruleans, the Demon King is like, fuck it, we'll just send the entire military out like we did before, but this time instead of retreating, like once one of our ships are destroyed, he's like, you know what, the humans are really close to discovering our main ocean base, so we got to like laser beam everything now and take over Earth. We gotta do like full-on invasion. No more crazy plots, no more like butterflies that eat people, no more exploding scientists. We got to invade Earth now. Alright. So they start exploding all these landmarks, and then meanwhile, it's like a crisis at like the United Nations or something with like the scientists and Ken. And then they're discussing what they should do with the Ceruleans, because it's been like 65 episodes at this point, and they gotta conclude the series somehow. But then they get a phone call from like the military commander or something, I don't know, they don't really say who he is. And they're basically saying like, yeah, the Ceruleans are attacking everything, but good news is we were able to like sonar, like x-ray or something, their main base, so we've located their main ocean base, so we can send you, Ken, and we can send reinforcements, and they're launching their massive counterattack on Earth, and we can launch our counterattack on their main base and defeat them once and for all. We can send a whole military there and everything. So, you know, it's basically the final battle, except it's really badly animated with, like, reused animation cells. So yeah, it's all-out battle with, like, Ken teams up with, like, the Earth military, which is interesting seeing them finally, you know, help Ken out defeat this alien threat. And then the Ceruleans launch all of their things, a lot of laser beams, a lot of explosions, even though they don't really have sound effects this episode. Oh my god. Yeah, and then Ken defeats the Ceruleans pretty quickly in like 1 minute. And then he flies off, and then they have, they don't even show him like getting thanked by the Earth people or getting thanked by his family or whatever. They literally just have him fly off, and then they have a still frame of like a sunset. And then they have like the narrator come back after like a long ass time. And then the narrator's like narrating the end of the episode, and then the narrator's like, oh wow, thanks to Ken's bravery, the Ceruleans' attempt to invade Earth was not successful, and the humans lived in peace, happily ever after. And that's how the episode fucking ends, and that's how the series ends. Oh my god, so this pisses me off. So I spent forever watching all these episodes, and this is how it ends. Yeah, so I mean, as a standalone episode, that's how I'm going to be ranking this, so it's a solid C rank episode. But as a final episode of an anime, oh my god, this is so uneventful. Like, they try to do this, like, massive, like, final battle, but they're so short on time, and they spend way too much time doing exposition at the beginning of the episode that they only, like, you know, do this, like, battle for, like, 20 seconds, and then it's, like, one frame explosions, the Demon King's like, oh, curse you, Ken, and then the Demon King dies, except we don't really get to see him die because it is just one frame explosions, and then, yeah, episode ends, narrator's like, happily ever after, bitches. So yeah, really terrible final episode, but as, like, a standalone episode, just a C rank, like, literally nothing happens to keep your attention besides the all-out battle, and then even then, that all-out battle is after, like, minutes of exposition, and this battle isn't even, like, one of the most creative battles. It's, like, this is the most generic, like, laser beam, explosion, curse you, Ken, more explosion, like, a picture of the sunset, like, a really crappy narration saying, like, happy ever after, credits, and then done, and that's the conclusion of the episode. So yeah, solid C rank episode, and then it's basically like once you get to this point, you realize you wasted your time with this series, so I'd highly recommend you don't watch any of these episodes besides maybe like the S rank and A rank episodes to get an idea of what the series is for. But yeah, this is a C rank episode. Let's see how many C ranks there are. Let's see the final ranking amounts for each of these episodes here.